The story begins in the royal palace. On the day the 17th prince, Heel, turned 15. On his 15th birthday, Heel officially came of age. To celebrate, the king granted Heel his own territory. However, Heel wasn't exactly thrilled, because the land he was given was a chaotic mess, and he had to restore it all by himself. Heel was taken to the island by boat. When he saw his new land, he couldn't have been more disappointed. When he discovered the island was just a cluster of coral reefs. It was called Shol Reef, a 15-day boat ride from the capital. The island was so remote that not even pirates bothered to come near it. After bringing him near the island, his escorts immediately turned back. They left without even checking if Heel could land safely. Regardless, this was now his responsibility. Heel couldn't even see a clear place to land. This piece of land, nothing more than a large rock, was now the domain of the 17th prince of the Sanfelice kingdom. His brothers all mocked him when Heel was granted Shol Reef, because he was already miserable for his lack of ability. What disappointed Heel most of all was that he didn't have a proper insignia. An insignia is something everyone is born with, and Heel's older brothers all had magnificent ones that granted them immense power. But his insignia was a mystery. No one knew what it actually did. Heel had tried many things on his own to see if his insignia would react, but nothing ever happened. This only brought more shame to his family. Before leaving, he had tried to ask his father to at least send a representative with him, but the king was proud of his decision and wouldn't change it just for Heel's request. He understood that he had essentially been exiled, sent to an uninhabited, nameless rock pile. Heel even thought that being executed for treason might be better than this, but he didn't want to die. Spotting a smaller group of rocks, Heel decided to try and land there, doing his best not to crash the boat into them. He used wind magic, but his magic was so weak it couldn't even move a feather. Somehow, Heel managed a difficult landing and took his supplies out of the boat. He decided to store them somewhere safe first, and spotted a cave in the distance. Heel carried his supplies into the cave, but a horrific sight greeted him. Dozens of skeletons were scattered about. Clearly, the remains of people who had drifted to this island but didn't survive. Though terrified, he had no choice but to accept the situation. Heel placed his supplies inside anyway, and stared out at the sea in despair. He found the scenery beautiful and far from all the conflicts of the capital. But he just wished his circumstances were a little different. He slapped himself across the face to snap out of it, and decided he had to survive at all costs. Heel thought about his next steps. First, find a passing ship to ask for help, but make sure it wasn't from his own kingdom. The chances were slim since almost no one came near the reef, and there were no shipping routes through here. He also had to face many other survival problems. Since the food and water he brought would only last for about a month, Heel knew he couldn't rely on magic, so he figured he would need to collect rainwater in barrels and catch fish. First, he decided to clean up the cave and bury the skeletons lying around, as they weren't exactly a pleasant sight. Heel took out a pickaxe to start digging, but just then, he heard a voice echo in his head, announcing that he had acquired a mining tool. Heel wondered what that voice was, and then he heard it again. This time, he asked the voice who it was. The voice belonged to his insignia, Cave King, and it had an advisory feature, which allowed it to speak to him. This was the day Heel discovered that the insignia he was born with was Cave King. He wondered why it had only activated now, and realized it was probably because he had never been to a cave or a mine in the capital. The insignia then explained that it also enhanced his mining skills, and would provide support so he could level up in the cave. It was a lot of information to take in all at once, but Heel decided to try mining. The insignia began to take effect, and he saw points of light appear in the cave. These white points of light were the most suitable places to mine, and had been carefully calculated to prevent cave-ins or damage. Heel tried striking one of the glowing spots in front of him. The powerful blow to the spot surprised Heel with how effective his mining was, thanks to the badge. With the help of his night vision, he could continue mining without any problems. Heel decided to start by carving out a bedroom for himself and continued to mine with determination for some time. Gradually, he even started to find joy in the work. As he dug a few meters deeper into the cave, Heel realized that his mining speed and power were increasing. The further he went into the cave, the more his mining skill improved by leveling up. Then, the advisor badge asked if he wanted to collect the 168 stones he had mined so far. Heel wondered where the stones would go, and the badge informed him they would be stored within his badge. He kept digging and soon noticed that the loose stones lying around were starting to get in the way of his mining. Heel decided to collect the stones, and they were stored in an inventory, just like in the game Minecraft. The badge then added an auto-collect feature to help him. Noticing his good mining speed, Heel thought he could dig through to the other side of the cave, so he decided to start digging downward. After digging for a while longer, the badge announced that he was at a depth of 10 meters. From the point where Heel had started digging, he didn't quite understand the concept of a meter yet, but he decided to take a break and check his inventory. Heel was surprised to see he had gathered copper, tin, and even gold ore just from mining here. Although he thought gold might not be very helpful on a deserted island, another stone caught his eye, the magic stone. Heel didn't know how to use it yet, but the badge provided information that the magic stone could enhance a user's magical power, and the larger the stone, the stronger the magic would be. The next stone that caught Heel's attention was the turtle stone, which could extend a person's lifespan by 1 day. This discovery astonished Heel, and he felt grateful to have such an incredible badge. His negative thoughts about Shol Reef now transformed into the realization that this domain was truly amazing. Heel got so caught up in mining that he completely forgot to watch for ships to find a way to escape. Soon, he had dug about 30 meters deep into the cave and had collected countless stones and ores in his inventory. Among them, the stones he was most curious about were still the magic stones and the turtle stones. Heel thought it would be great if he could use higher-level magic. And with that in mind, he used all 90 magic stones he had. After using the 90 magic stones, Heel was surprised that he didn't feel any different, so he decided to test it out directly. He used wind magic to clear the path he had dug earlier. This time, the wind filled the entire cave, sweeping away all the debris, bones, rocks, and everything else in its path, blasting them out of the cave. Heel was a bit shocked to see that this was his own power, and couldn't believe that just 90 magic stones had strengthened him this much. Afterward, a slime was attracted by Heel's magic and approached him. This slime wasn't hostile, and actually seemed to like Heel. He wondered what it was, and after 3 days of getting used to life here, Heel came to accept the slime's presence. He started each day by checking his tools and supplies to prepare for his usual mining. He decided to befriend the slime he had met 3 days ago and named it Shell. This happened when his badge informed him that he could tame the slime and that taming monsters would make them follow him. However, taming only worked on non-hostile monsters, and in Heel's old kingdom, monsters like slimes were despised. But in this cave, there was no one to judge him, so Heel tamed the slime and named it Shell. He was happy to have another living creature by his side and thought Shell couldn't understand him. But to his surprise, Shell could understand him a little bit and started helping Heel with his mining, becoming his invaluable assistant. According to Heel, Shell was really smart. Now, Heel could reach places he couldn't get to before. He started using gestures to guide Shell into whatever shape he wanted, and because of that, his mining progressed 3 times faster than before. With this progress, Heel had consumed 500 magic stones with his body, and thanks to his enhanced magic, he no longer had to worry about food. At night, Shell would even turn into a pillow for Heel in the exact shape he wanted. While mining, Heel discovered about 10 more slimes, and communicating with them was quite easy, which showed just how special Shell was compared to the others. Heel was fine with that, as long as they didn't interfere with his mining. That night, he went to sleep excited about what he would mine tomorrow. The next morning, Shell woke Heel up by jumping around, trying to point in a certain direction. Curious about Shell's unusual behavior, Heel looked in the direction it was pointing and noticed someone approaching the island. Heel rushed over, and he discovered 3 creatures washing up on his island. They were 3 green goblins, and it looked like their boat had crashed against the rocks. At first, Heel hesitated because goblins were usually dangerous to humans, and most people killed them on sight. But Shell wanted Heel to help them, and Heel himself didn't feel right about just letting them die here. He decided to use his recovery magic on them and move them to a safe place. After taking the 3 goblins to a safe place and ensuring their lives were no longer in danger, Heel immediately returned to the cave. He asked Shell to inform him of any changes in their condition and left Shell to watch over them. Heel knew that if he was too careless with goblins, they could attack him at any moment. Still, thanks to his enhanced magic, Heel felt confident he could protect himself if anything happened. Although he still felt a little anxious, he decided to calm down and continue mining. The work of mining was gradually becoming a joy for Heel, letting him forget all his worries. After some time, Heel checked his inventory and discovered 2 new stones. One was a brilliant stone that never lost its light, and the other was a Musavi stone, which could dispel all types of curses. However, Heel thought these stones weren't very useful for his situation, since he could already see in the dark and there was no one on this deserted island to curse him. So he decided to continue mining. After a little while, Shell signaled to Heel that the goblins were awake. Heel went to check, but when he heard them talking, he hid to be safe. He decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. At that moment, one of the goblins seemed to be inspecting Heel's food, and the others were trying to stop him. The goblin general, L, detected Heel's presence and immediately grew wary, raising his weapon. The goblin princess told L to lower his weapon, since Heel was the one who had saved their lives. However, L couldn't do it because he still saw Heel as a dangerous human. Heel was surprised to learn that the goblins spoke the same language as him, which could mean they were from the same continent. He told them he had no intention of harming them, but L wouldn't trust a human based on words alone. Vari spoke up, suggesting Heel might be plotting something, because the expression on his face looked very suspicious. Heel was confused by that comment. Just then, Shell transformed into a mirror, and when he looked into it, Heel was shocked to see his own terrifying face. He really did look dangerous, and realized he was slowly becoming someone else from mining so much every day. Heel fixed his expression and told the goblins they could have his food, since he could easily get more. To prove it, he used wind magic to catch a fish right in front of them. El was stunned by Heel's power and asked why, if he was that strong, he hadn't just killed them from the start. The goblin princess Ree tried to explain it to El, but she suddenly collapsed. Everyone worried about Rai, and Heel asked if she had been treated. The elderly goblin, Vari, explained that wasn't it, but that Rianne was actually afflicted by the curse of shortened life. The group fell into despair, weeping because they believed their princess had reached her final moments. Seeing the situation turning dire, Heel stopped Vari and El from sacrificing their lives along with Ree. He said he could heal her, but El got angry, saying they had already tried everything without any success. However, Heel decided to use the Misogi stone he had found earlier to break the curse. Because Ree's lifespan had been shortened, he used an additional 79 turtle stones to restore it. The goblins were astonished, wondering where Heel had gotten such rare stones. But the most important thing was that Ree was revived, feeling healthier than ever. Ree was confused about what had happened, as she thought she was dead. El realized that Heel wasn't a bad person, and upon seeing that he was the one who saved their princess, El bowed his head to the ground and sincerely apologized to Heel. Sitting down together, Heel invited the goblins to eat and introduced himself. He was also surprised by El's strength, remembering how he had shattered the stone floor just by headbutting it, which showed how truly fearsome goblins were. While they talked, El apologized for everything that had happened and introduced himself as General El of the Belden tribe. Princess Ree spoke next, identifying herself as the daughter of Roden, king of the Belden tribe. Finally, the old goblin Vari introduced himself as the tribe's mage. After their introductions, Heal also introduced himself as a prince from the Sanfales kingdom. El thought Hyel could use all the powerful magic he'd seen earlier because he was a prince. However, Hyel denied this and explained that his power came from the magic stones he had mined. Vari asked why they had come to this island. El recounted the story of how their homeland was destroyed by a horde of orcs. The royal family of the Belden tribe was almost completely wiped out, with only Princess Reef surviving. For the past year, they had been searching for a place to live, but no other tribe would take them in, and humans constantly chased them away. Finally, they decided to head for the New World with the other survivors. But during the journey, their ship was wrecked. Now they didn't even know if the others were safe. Princess Rai comforted Vari, telling him he didn't need to feel guilty, because even if they had stayed on the mainland, their fate would likely not have been any different. Ree thanked Hyel for helping monsters like them. Heel said it was nothing, though he felt sad hearing about what they had been through. Ree sighed, saying she probably wouldn't live much longer, but she was very grateful that the pain in her chest was gone and that she could pass away peacefully. Heel advised her not to give up so soon, and revealed that there were many more turtle stones deep underground. He said that if they used them, they could extend her lifespan for as long as they wanted. Heel assured them that if he kept mining for a week, he could find enough turtle stones to help her live for at least another year. El felt that was too much to ask of Heel, so he offered to help him mine. However, Hale smiled and told him not to worry. El and Ree sincerely thanked Heel for saving her life. Ree asked why he would give her something so precious, and Heel just smiled and told her not to worry about it. Because for him, digging was just fun. Besides, he was happy to have more people around. Hearing this, Ree was moved, her heart filled with hope knowing she could continue to live. What Ryan felt was completely natural for anyone saved from the brink of death. Heel told her it was no big deal and began to wonder what he should do next. He had enough ice pickaxes, but he was still wondering about which areas to mine. His crest informed him that he could share a portion of his power with tamed monsters. Heel asked if they wanted to become his tamed monsters, explaining that it would make it easier for them to mine together. He emphasized that the decision was theirs, and that he would give them the turtle stones regardless. Grateful for Heel's kindness, they agreed to join his party as tamed monsters. Rianne also agreed, feeling she needed to help everyone instead of just sitting idly by and letting them work for her. She also wanted to repay Heel for saving her life. Heel then started thinking about giving them new names. He gave El the new name Elvin, Vari became Varys, and Ree became Rihanna. They loved their new names and promised to devote themselves to him from now on. Afterward, Hale took out the lightstone and used it to create torches for the goblins, since they couldn't see in the dark like he could. Heel explained to everyone how to recognize the glowing spots in the cave. Those were the best places to mine. Then he demonstrated how to mine by striking the wall in front of them, causing it to crumble completely. He reassured them that they would be able to dig like that too, adding that he wasn't that strong in the beginning either. The next problem was collecting the stones and ores, since the others didn't have an automatic retrieval skill. Heel then tasked Shell with guiding the other slimes on how to collect stones and ores efficiently. Model. You believe that with practice, they would become proficient, and from there, everyone began to mine together. Thanks to their cooperation, the cave became more bustling than ever before, filled with a new vitality from that day on. While mining, Heel recalled a painful memory from his past, when he was bullied for being weak. Back then, he had tried to protect a monster that was tied up and being tortured by the bullies. The object around his neck reminded him of that event, bringing the painful memories flooding back. Elvin noticed something was off and asked Heel if he was tired from digging continuously. Rihanna also asked worriedly if he was okay. Hearing Rihanna, Heel said he was just thinking a bit and insisted that he couldn't get tired thanks to the Cave King emblem. Rihanna gently advised him not to overwork himself and to take care of his health. Heel reassured Rihanna that he wouldn't push himself too hard. Just then, he smelled a delicious aroma. It was the scent of apple pie Rihanna had made for everyone. The group was delighted to have a new treat to enjoy. 3 days had passed since Heel met the goblins, and in that short time, they had created new amenities, like a bathhouse and a water reservoir, and a simple kitchen. Thanks to this, Heel could enjoy Rihanna's cooking. Every dish she made was absolutely delicious, which made him very happy. Rihanna was also glad she could make good use of the supplies Heel had brought from his hometown. Elvin remarked that mining was surprisingly more fun than he'd expected, and Varys agreed. They were happy to be able to work to extend their princess's life, and Rihanna thanked them for it. The group's situation was improving day by day, but there was still much to be done. Heel realized they were still lacking many necessary resources, especially a greater variety of food besides fish, and their clothes were starting to wear out. He didn't have high hopes of being able to stop a ship and trade gems for supplies, but the biggest difference he felt was that he had started to think and worry like a true lord. Heel decided to continue mining deeper, hoping to find more turtle stones for Rihanna and perhaps discover new types of minerals. While mining, he came across an empty space and decided to explore. Inside, Heel found strange stones with a brilliant sunset orange hue. The soil in this area was also different, which made him curious. When he looked up, Heel suddenly came face to face with a giant spider. At first, Heel didn't dare to move, just staring into the spider's eyes, afraid he might become its meal. He quickly prepared a spell to deal with it. But to his surprise, the spider fled. Observing more closely, Heel realized the spider only wanted to protect its young. Understanding the situation, he felt guilty for having scared it. Right after, the emblem informed him that these were tameable monsters. A little later, while Elvin was waiting for Heel to return, he was shocked to see Heel coming back with a swarm of giant spiders following him. Heel laughed, apologizing for startling Elvin and explaining that he had just convinced the spiders in the cave to join their group. Varys was astonished by their massive size, since normal spiders were usually only as big as his torso. Varys informed Heel that the silk of these spiders was harder than iron, and their fangs contained an extremely potent venom. They were known for their dangerous nature, having even preyed on monsters and humans. Varys also revealed that the soil at the back of the cave was actually their waste. However, he brought good news. The soil from cave spiders could be used for farming, making cultivation much easier. Varys then asked where they could possibly farm inside this cave. Heel smiled and said he had something he wanted to show them. He led them to a tunnel and told them to look inside. When they looked in, they were stunned to see a long staircase leading deep down, and they asked Heel where it had come from. Heel explained that he had created the staircase on his way back with Terran, the giant spider. Since the passage was too narrow for Terran, Heel had widened the area and built the stairs by using the new features of his power as the Cave King. Heel could now shape the cave area as he pleased, managing and crafting items in the warehouse, and using many new features, such as adding night vision to tamed monsters. Elvin and the others were thrilled with this progress, motivating them to work even harder. The next day, Heel announced a party to welcome Terran and its offspring. Rihanna offered to grill a lot of fish for the feast. Heel also planned to develop the island further and add more amenities in the future. Meanwhile, Elvin and Varys continued crafting ice picks, and Heel helped them with the complicated parts they didn't know how to do yet. He believed that being able to create iron tools here was a huge step forward. Rihanna was tasked with weaving clothes from spider silk. Heel also assigned everyone to gather the spider waste in one place. And in doing so, he discovered something else surprising about Terran. It moved faster than anything he had ever seen. Afterward, Heel used the spider waste to plant an apple seed, and it grew into a tree in just a moment. He was amazed by this growth rate and understood why Terran was so gigantic. However, Heel realized that the tree's rapid growth wasn't just due to the waste, but also thanks to the sunstones he had found in the cave. Since he couldn't find these stones anywhere else, he decided he must use them carefully. Heel put Rihanna in charge of managing the sunstones and planning their cultivation. Although Rihanna was a bit apprehensive about this responsibility, Heel trusted her and insisted that she could do it well. Rihanna promised not to let him down. After that, Hyle rode Shell to get back to work. With everyone focused on mining, Heel decided to pour his own energy into mining more turtle stones. By this point, Heel had extended Rihanna's lifespan by 5 years, but he still worried about her since she was only 15, the same age as him. He guessed that she probably wanted to live longer, and with that thought, Heel continued to mine, knowing that he was the most efficient miner in the group. While mining, Heel found a white stone and quickly collected it. Surprisingly, that white stone turned out to be a dragon orb, capable of resurrecting someone who had died. Feeling excited, Heel immediately called everyone over to help dig more in that spot. However, despite mining a lot, they didn't find any more dragon orbs. Heel realized that if he could resurrect as many people as he wanted with dragon orbs, it could become a terrifying thing. So, he decided not to store it in his inventory, but to leave it out. Just then, Elvin called for him urgently. Heel quickly put the dragon orb down and rushed upstairs. However, the stone accidentally rolled down and fell onto a corpse. When Heel arrived, Elvin reported that they could see their comrade's ship approaching the island, and that it was definitely them. Everyone was overjoyed to learn that the other goblins from their tribe were still alive, including Elvin's daughter. Heel immediately warned Elvin that it would be dangerous for the ship to dock here, and suggested he use his own boat to go out and meet them. In his heart, Heel thought that Elvin and the others would probably leave the island with their tribe. So he gave them a large number of sunstones as a farewell gift, so they could restore their tribe wherever they went. Elvin was confused by Heel's words. When asked, Heel told them they should leave this deserted island because it would be better for them somewhere else. He added that once they found a new settlement, they could start trading with each other. Hearing this, Elvin and the others were surprised and bewildered, unable to believe their ears at his words of farewell. Immediately, Elvin shouted, pleading with Heel not to abandon them like this. He insisted they had sworn to always be by Heel's side and would never leave him. Rihanna also spoke up, saying that they were Heel's subordinates and would always be loyal to him. Heel felt happy and relieved to hear their words, but he reminded them that this might be their last chance to leave the island. Rihanna then asked him why, if that were the case, he didn't go with them. Heel looked back at the rocky mountain behind him and remembered the time when all he wanted was to leave this place. But now, things had changed. Rihanna understood Heel's feelings for this place and said that if he wasn't leaving, she wouldn't leave either. Elvin and Varys agreed, which deeply moved Heel. But suddenly, the sea waves turned violent and began to sink their ship. Elvin panicked when he realized most of the goblins on the ship couldn't swim. Without hesitation, they immediately got on their boat to rescue those on the ship. Watching them rush off, Heel realized they wouldn't make it in time. This moment brought back painful memories of his past, a time when he was helpless, unable to save anyone. But this time, Heel was different. He was no longer desperate like before. With a look of pure determination, Heel ran straight to the edge of the cliff and jumped. With his heart full of confidence, he was no longer the weak person he used to be. Heel steadied his mind, placing all his faith in the Cave King's insignia. He used his ice magic on the ocean, freezing the entire body of water around the ship and preventing it from capsizing. Seeing the power he now wielded after using over 8,000 magic stones, Heel couldn't help but be astonished. He continued to maintain the solid layer of ice and shouted for Elvin and the others to cross it and save the goblins on the ship. To save those on board, Elvin immediately sprang into action, but he slipped and fell on the ice. Heel realized this was something he hadn't anticipated. Just then, Taryn jumped in with Heel and carried him across the ice on her back. Heel realized that Taryn's agile legs could be the key to helping them in this situation. Taryn's other spiders quickly arrived to help. Seeing the spiders' assistance, Elvin felt sad about his own helplessness, but was also deeply grateful for their help. Shell and the other slimes also joined the rescue effort. Heel directed everyone to assist those who were drowning, while he used magic to hold back the rising waves. With the coordinated efforts of the slimes, spiders, Elvin, and the others, they successfully rescued everyone with no casualties. Hyle continued to use his magic to heal those injured during the rescue. Rihanna thanked Heel for saving everyone and wondered how she could ever repay him. Heel said that just knowing everyone was safe was enough to make him happy. Meanwhile, Elvin couldn't hold back his tears upon being reunited with his daughter Fu, who he had long thought was lost. His happiness at knowing she was still alive was immeasurable. Everyone was moved by the emotional reunion. Heel emphasized that he couldn't have done it without everyone's support. Heel felt grateful for the help from the spiders, slimes, Rihanna, Elvin, and Varys in saving the entire Belden tribe. He told himself that in the past, he never would have been able to do something like this. Looking back on how much he'd changed, Heel felt an overwhelming gratitude, unsure how to even begin thanking everyone for helping him become a better version of himself. Just then, Varys announced that a strange man was standing behind Heel and asked who it was. The man's sudden appearance left Heel confused. He asked Varys if the man could have come from the ship, but Varys confirmed there was no one like that on board. Varys then wondered if Heel had met him in the cave, but Heel said that wasn't it either. Stranger still, the man was completely naked. Heel approached him to communicate, but the man just silently walked over to the others and started eating. It turned out he was simply hungry. Rihanna quickly decided to grill more fish for him and the others, while Heel and Varys were still puzzled over who this man could be. The next day, Heel was busy preparing rooms for the island's new arrivals. He had tamed all of them and came up with new names for each one. Although the circumstances weren't ideal, Heel was happy that his island was becoming more and more lively. However, this also created an urgent need to increase food production and supplies. Rihanna came to Heel and offered him a taste of the grape juice she had just made. The grape juice was fresh and delicious, made from grapes she had grown herself. With the help of sunstones and seeds found on the ship, Rihanna told Heel that the farm was still small, but in a few years, the orchard would be full of different kinds of fruit. Hearing her speak of the future made Heel very happy, because Rihanna had never thought that far ahead before. Now, she was able to look forward to the future. Heel smiled and told Rihanna that if there was anything he could do to help, she should just let him know. Heel told Rihanna she could always count on him whenever she needed. Shortly after, he heard the goblins having trouble with the strange man, Mappa. He kept wandering around and staring at everyone, which made the goblins uncomfortable. One goblin told him to go somewhere else, saying his stare was unsettling. At some point, everyone had just started calling him Mappa. Mappa picked up the items the goblins had made, then put them back down as if they weren't good enough. An angry goblin challenged Mappa to try it himself, handing him a hammer. Suddenly, Mappa's eyes filled with determination. He began to craft an object, with expert skill, astonishing everyone. Heel and the goblins realized that Mappa seemed very familiar with this kind of work. As Mappa hammered repeatedly at the hot iron, his strikes were powerful and precise, leaving everyone stunned. Before long, Mappa finished crafting the ice pickaxes, and the results were incredible. The pickaxes weren't just sturdy. They were also beautiful, like works of art. Heel got the idea to compare the pickaxe Mappa had just made with the regular ones they had been using before, to see if there was any difference. When he tested both pickaxes side by side in the cave, all of Heel's doubts quickly vanished. The pickaxe Mappa crafted was vastly superior, even though both were made from the same type of iron. Then, Heel suddenly remembered where he had placed the dragon pearl. Heel was sure he had left the dragon pearl in a specific spot, but now it was gone. Looking closer, he noticed an unexpected mark on the ground. He guessed that there might have been a skeleton lying in the shadow of the rocks, and that's when Heel suddenly realized Mappa had been revived by the dragon pearl. Though surprised, Heel was happy to have another reliable ally. With Mappa's help, they leveled the island's coastline. Not only that, but the group also dismantled the ship and began to rebuild it. Many other large projects were gradually set in motion. During this time, Hyle also discovered more new slimes and tamed them to help transport stones. Everything seemed to be progressing smoothly, except for one problem. The supply of turtle stones was dwindling. Rihanna reassured Heel that she was fine with the current number of turtle stones, but she mentioned that the 10 years of life they had secured for her still seemed too short for a girl her age. That's when Heel realized that helping Rihanna wasn't the only reason he was working so hard to mine turtle stones. Deep down, he wanted Rihanna to stay by his side for longer. He wanted to continue mining and developing the island with her. While continuing to mine, Heel suddenly discovered a huge chamber hidden behind the cave. This made him freeze. He had always thought this was just a desolate island. But this chamber held traces of a life that had existed long ago. Heel decided to explore this mysterious chamber and collect anything he could find during his expedition. Heel discovered a heartstone that could become the core of an artificial body. With this stone, he could create puppets or add new allies for himself. After that, he collected the golden stone in the center of the chamber. This was a transformation stone, which allowed a monster to evolve into a different species. According to the detailed explanation, the transformation stone could change a monster into a new species, while also adopting the lifespan and personality of that new species. At first, Heel found this ability a bit strange and frightening, but then an idea popped into his head. He decided to discuss it with Varys, Rihanna, and Elven. When Heel presented it, Varys confirmed that he had heard of this type of stone from the legends of their tribe. Varys asked Heel if he knew of any species similar to goblins. Heel recalled that there were hobgoblins and leaf goblins. Varys went on to explain that both hobgoblins and leaf goblins were actually once normal goblins. Goblins who craved power became hobgoblins, while those who wanted to live deep in the forest became leaf goblins. Both species had used the transformation stone. From these examples, Heel began to understand the meaning of evolution. Varys seemed surprised when he saw the stone for the first time. And Heel remembered that the Cave King's emblem had told him this stone had the ability to evolve and reset a lifespan. He asked everyone if they wanted to try using it. Elven expressed his curiosity, but said he liked his body as it was, and didn't want to change. When it was Rihanna's turn, she spoke up, saying she wanted to try using the stone, hoping to gain the ability to use magic to help heal. However, she hesitated, unsure if she should use something so precious. Elven and Varys both agreed with the idea. Heel also encouraged her, saying it would be very helpful if Rihanna could use magic, and above all, he wanted her to live longer. Heel's words strengthened Rihanna's resolve. She decided to use the transformation stone. Heel handed her the stone, and Rihanna held it in her hands, closing her eyes. In her mind, she wished she could stay by Heel's side for a very long time, and chose to transform into a stone globe rider. A brilliant light erupted from the stone, forcing everyone to shut their eyes. A few seconds later, when the light faded, everyone was stunned to see that Rihanna had transformed into a beautiful teenage human girl. Rihanna herself was also shocked by her new appearance. The most surprised of all was Mappa, who got a nosebleed upon seeing the beautiful girl without a stitch of clothing on. A few hours later, Heel woke up and wondered when he had fallen asleep. He remembered the moment Rihanna evolved, and then everything went blurry. When he came to, Heel found his head resting on Rihanna's lap. She gently reassured him that she was right there with him. Leaving Heel flustered and embarrassed, he immediately sat up, still not used to her new form. Rihanna told Heel he should rest since he had suddenly passed out. After shielding her to protect her from Mappa's bloody nose, Heel gave a small laugh, saying he was fine now, just a little tired. He asked her how long he'd been asleep, and how Mappa was doing. Rihanna said that Mappa was also sleeping. Then, Heel asked if she was feeling okay, since no one expected her to transform into a human form. Rihanna was silent for a moment before gently confessing that she had never liked her old form. She explained that she'd been cursed since she was little, causing her body to weaken over the years. Because of this, her beautiful older sisters mocked her. Her parents tried to help at first, but eventually, they too grew distant. When Rihanna told that part of the story, she paused and looked at Heel. She said that when she saw her new appearance in the mirror for the first time, the feeling was incredibly strange. Rihanna had turned into exactly what she'd always wished to be, someone beautiful. She apologized to Heel for using the precious stone for what she felt was a selfish wish. Heel smiled and told her she didn't need to say that. He had changed a lot since coming to this island too, and it made him happy that she could start a new life in a body she loved. Heel insisted it would have been a waste for her to live in a body she didn't like. Rihanna thanked Heel for his generosity and understanding. She said that since she owed this new body to Heel, she decided to devote her everything to him. As Heel took her hand and was about to say something, they both suddenly realized Mappa was standing behind them, watching the whole thing, startling them both. Rihanna's transformation surprised the entire Belden tribe. Afterward, she personally sewed clothes for herself from the silk of Turan and the other spiders. When she asked everyone what they thought, aside from those who had witnessed her evolution, no one could believe she had changed so much overnight. However, upon seeing Rihanna work so hard, they gradually accepted her and grew closer to her. Rihanna quickly poured all her energy into learning magic and martial arts with relentless ambition. Her new life brought her joy and motivation. Heel was happy to see Rihanna enjoying this change and living every moment to the fullest. One day, Varys came over and asked Heel what he was thinking about. And Heel immediately blurted out that he totally wasn't looking at Rihanna's legs or anything like that. Varys, missing the implication, replied seriously that Heel should be paying attention to Rihanna's crest. It was a farmer's crest. Varys explained that this crest had the ability to ensure a bountiful harvest, and that it was truly the right decision for Heel to put Rihanna in charge of farming. Heel was surprised to learn that a goblin could also possess a crest. Varys confirmed that it was possible. Heel apologized if his words seemed rude, as he had previously thought only humans could have crests. To further clarify, Varys showed Heel his own crest, Sorcery King, a powerful crest. However, Varys said he couldn't use it because he had no magic. Even so, he could still support Rihanna in her magic studies through his crest, even if he couldn't cast spells himself. Varys then reminded him that they should focus on reclaiming land from the sea to expand the island and increase their farming area. He also suggested creating larger areas for the children to play. However, he stressed that they would need more materials for this job. Heel replied that he wanted to try an idea and asked Varys to leave that part to him. He realized that he could use the crafting workshop even outside the cave. With this workshop, he began to create raw materials like stone blocks in pre-planned locations. After that, Heel used water magic to draw in the surrounding seawater, replacing it with stone and gravel, then covering the surface with soil from the cave spiders. He saw that the work was a success and that he had managed to create a large open space outside the workshop. When everything was finished, Rihanna, Varys, and Elven came to inspect the new area. The children quickly followed after them. Seeing the spacious area, the children happily ran and jumped around, thanking Heel for this wonderful gift. Heel was glad that he could help everyone, and Rihanna thanked him as well, saying that she would use this new land to grow lush crops. Heel was also eagerly looking forward to the results. Suddenly, a giant bird swooped down and attacked Mappa without warning, and swallowed him whole. The goblins panicked when they realized it was a killer bird, a notorious predatory bird known to travel in flocks. Heel quickly directed everyone to retreat to the cave, and the entire group started running towards it. While they were running, a child fell, making the situation even more tense. Elven immediately moved to help the child while Heel used magic to push back the birds. Suddenly, a bird dove straight for Elven and the child. But just then, Elven unleashed a lightning-fast slash, severing the bird's neck and saving his daughter. He told her to get away quickly, and charged back into the fight, showing the true strength of a goblin general from the Belden tribe. Heel decided to join Elven in the battle. However, from behind, another bird suddenly dove at him. Just then, Rihanna cast a magic shield to block the attack, allowing Heel to focus on fighting without worry. She encouraged him. "Do what you have to do." Heel reminded Elven to be careful and only attack the birds' heads, since they didn't know which one had swallowed Mappa. Varys called them back to the cave entrance to make a defensive stand, and Heel remembered that he had the Heartstone. He got the idea to create a giant golem from the available stone and place the Heartstone inside. Once activated, the golem easily destroyed the birds attacking the entrance. The bird that had swallowed Mappa finally spat him out, and a slime managed to catch him. Thanks to that, they no longer had to worry about harming Mappa during the fight. Heel signaled to Elvin to regroup, and Elvin quickly grabbed his axe, ready to continue the battle. Elvin used axes tied with ropes made from Terran spider silk to bind dozens of killer birds at once. These threads were incredibly strong. Immediately after, Heel stepped forward and unleashed a blizzard spell, freezing all the bound birds in a single cast. Seeing this, the other killer birds were terrified and immediately retreated. The entire group of goblins cheered in victory, and Elvin felt proud as he witnessed how brilliantly Heel commanded and fought. Rihanna quickly ran to Heel's side and worriedly asked if he was injured. Heel admitted that he was terrified at first, but having her by his side calmed him down. Even though the battle was over, Heel's legs were still shaking, as this was the first time he had faced such fearsome monsters. Varys came over, expressing his joy that everyone was safe, and the others shared the same sentiment. Heel realized he had come a long way from who he used to be and began to feel proud of himself, as someone capable of becoming a true lord. The group returned to the cave, and on the way, Heel curiously asked Rihanna if the killer birds were edible. Rihanna smiled and said that not only were they edible, but they were also delicious when roasted. That night, the group held a more lavish feast than they had ever had before. They all enjoyed the roasted killer birds together, celebrating their victory and savoring the atmosphere of unity after the arduous battle. Heel tried monster meat for the first time and was surprised to find that it was very tasty. He found it delightful, and Rihanna was pleased to see him enjoying the meal so enthusiastically. She suggested he try the meat from the killer bird's breast, which he called Shol, and Hael found that to be delicious as well. Rihanna explained that the flavor of the meat depended on the part of the killer bird's body, with each section having a distinct taste. Although they now knew the danger posed by the killer birds, Heel realized they could also be a valuable food source. So he decided to leave the golem on guard duty to watch for the appearance of these birds. Varys was pleased with that decision, as killer birds tended to stay away from things larger than themselves. Varys also proposed establishing a gatekeeper unit and began planning the construction of surrounding walls and watchtowers to protect the fields from sea salt damage. Heel assigned Teal the task of processing the stone, while Varys would be responsible for the detailed planning of the project. Meanwhile, Hael noticed a little girl staring at him. He knew she was Elvin's daughter, but he couldn't remember her name. The little girl smiled and reminded him of her name, the very name Heel himself had given her, which made him laugh at his own forgetfulness. The little girl, Fu, asked Heel why he was so strong. Heel explained that it was thanks to using the magic stones he obtained through mining. Fu got excited knowing such magical stones existed and asked if she could join in digging for them. Rihanna told Fu that to be able to use magic, she would need to use an evolution stone to evolve. Fu immediately wanted to try evolving, but it wasn't possible as they didn't have any evolution stones at the moment. Just then, Elvin appeared and lightly bonked Fu for bothering Heel, reminding her not to speak so rudely to him. Elvin then apologized to Heel for his daughter's behavior. Heel just smiled, seeing the clear resemblance between the father and daughter. He encouraged Fu, telling her that if she found an evolution stone, she could use it. Hearing this, Fu became excited and decided she would join Heel in mining. She promised to do her best to help him, and Heel was also happy to have more help with the mining work. Afterward, Heel used 800 magic stones to enhance Rihanna's magical power. She took responsibility for developing her abilities and pledged to do her utmost to improve even more. Elvin reminded Rihanna that she needed to eat well to maintain her strength, and the day ended with Heel successfully reclaiming more new land, along with delicious food, turning that day into the first commemoration day at Shol Reef. The next day, Hael visited the freezer room that Rihanna had suggested, for the purpose of preserving large quantities of food. He had built it quite large, but unfortunately caught a cold from staying inside for too long. Thanks to this freezer room, They no longer had to worry about meat spoiling. Rihanna explained that food preserved in the freezer caves could last for more than half a year. Mappa had decided on the design for the freezer room door, and Heel immediately understood Mappa's idea, creating the door in the exact shape Mappa wanted. After that, they also began modifying the boats, a task assigned to Mappa and Varys, while Rihanna took on the regular duty of casting freezing spells to maintain the temperature of the freezer room. Rihanna grew more and more confident in herself thanks to the support of Elvin and Varys. Heel was pleased to see the outer defenses being completed with the help of Elvin and Varys. Once things had stabilized, he could return his focus to mining. Fu remarked that she was surprised how smoothly everything was going without any incidents. She was impressed with how Heel, with his Cave King emblem, could achieve so much even without a cave. Fu also mentioned that they needed to add a ventilation system, as letting dust accumulate for a long time could be harmful to their lungs. If poisonous gases like fire damp were to build up, it could lead to poisoning or even cause the cave to explode. Fu said she had heard about a device that could circulate air from the inside out, and decided she would ask Mappa to build it later. Fu's advice proved to be incredibly useful. She also revealed that she had a miner's emblem and had worked in the mines since she was a child. Heel felt reassured and encouraged Fu to freely offer her opinions if she noticed anything that needed to be changed. Her rich experience and good intuition made her very effective at finding ore, and she quickly became Heel's best mining rival after Terran. Fu then suddenly asked Heel if he had a father. Heel replied that he did, but his memories of his father were rather faint and difficult. He also confessed that he used to be very afraid of his father and older brothers. Even now, with his incredible power, Heel still felt that his family held a superior power, far stronger than anything he possessed. Heel asked Fu if she wanted to become stronger than her father. Fu felt Heel's question was rather obvious. Of course, she wanted to be stronger than her father. While exploring, she suddenly discovered an empty cave and, curious about what was inside, immediately ran in to check. Inside was a giant stone chamber. Fu asked Heel if the transformation stone had also been kept in a similar room. Heel nodded in agreement, making Fu excited and eager to explore further. However, one of the statues in the room suddenly moved and used fire magic. Heel quickly cast a magic shield to protect himself and Fu. He asked Fu if she was hurt, and after making sure she was safe, Heel realized that these statues were acting like golems, not only able to move, but also use magic. The golems continued their attack, and some were even carrying swords, surrounding Heel and Fu. However, Heel had a strategy to deal with them. He used wind magic to create gales of wind, throwing the golems far away. Fu wasn't hurt, but she apologized for rushing in without thinking. Heel reassured her, saying that he hadn't expected to face golems like these either, and quickly signaled for Shol to tell everyone to halt their mining operations. While checking the area, Fu found a stone and excitedly asked Heel if it was the transformation stone, but upon closer inspection, Heel discovered it was a magic stone, a type of stone that could be used to create artificial dolls. Fu was disappointed to learn it wasn't the transformation stone she had hoped for. Just then, Mappa suddenly appeared, startling Fu. He cheerfully collected the swords from the destroyed golems and quickly returned to the surface, with a joyful expression, as if he had just found a treasure. Fu wondered how long Mappa would remain shirtless and asked Heel if all humans were like that. Heel laughed and replied that not everyone was, but Mappa was clearly more excited than usual. Mappa tried to pick up a sword from another golem, but despite all his effort, the sword wouldn't budge. Even when Heel and Fu tried together, they couldn't lift it either. Heel tried to collect the sword, but was notified that he couldn't collect anything other than minerals and mined items. Heel decided to use his pickaxe to break the sword, but his initial strikes had no effect. He persistently tried again and again, and finally, after many attempts, the sword shattered. Heel wondered what the sword was made of and discovered it was made from Orichalcum, a material lighter than metal but stronger, with the ability to amplify magical effects. As he continued to check his inventory, Heel suddenly saw something incredible, but before he could react, he had to return to the main cave. There, Elvin was struggling to lift the sword that Mappa had brought back. When Heel entered, he asked what was going on. Rihanna explained that everyone had tried to lift the sword, but no one could do it. Heel mentioned that it would be very difficult, as the sword was made from 300 Orichalcum, an incredibly rare and heavy material. Elvin didn't give up and kept trying. Finally, with all his strength, he succeeded in lifting the sword, leaving everyone surprised and impressed. Thanks to the power boost from his great warrior emblem, Elvin was able to lift the Orichalcum sword. But he couldn't hold it for long and eventually had to let it go. Heel quickly went to his side and used healing magic to treat his wounds, which were fortunately only minor. Fu immediately rushed over and hugged her father tightly, scolding him for being a fool and making her worry. Elvin apologized and promised to be more careful from now on. Meanwhile, Mappa effortlessly lifted the sword and carried it to the forge. As a member of the legendary dwarven race, Mappa had always loved using rare minerals. Thanks to his extraordinary strength, mysterious techniques, and noble spirit, he began crafting with the Orichalcum. Before long, Mappa brought Heel a special item, a pickaxe made of Orichalcum, clearly crafted especially for him. Afterward, Mappa continued to create many other tools from Orichalcum, though he maintained his odd habit of not wearing clothes. The next day, Elvin faced off against a monster and discovered that his axe had no effect on it. Determined not to back down, Elvin moved in closer to deal with the monster, seeing it as a challenge. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Fu was checking the ventilation area and confirmed that everything was perfect. Thanks to the ventilation holes and Mappa's rotating blade system, tidal energy was constantly bringing in fresh air, making the space feel much cleaner. Fu said she just wanted to get back to mining right away, and Heel agreed with her. However, he decided to wait a little longer since they had just been attacked the day before. Even so, Fu decided to head straight for the forge to prepare things herself, while Heel tried to figure out the best way to safely resume their mining operations. Heel decided to create new golems to ensure everyone could mine more safely. He wanted these golems to be more precise, so he began sketching designs on the ground. However, Heel got too carried away and accidentally designed a golem made entirely of Orichalcum, equipped with a sword, bow, gun, and even a magic stone. When Rena suddenly appeared to see what he was doing, Heel was startled, and she quickly apologized for interrupting him. Rihanna asked Heel if he had a moment, telling him to come with her, which was quite rare for her to do. They arrived at the farming area, and Heel was amazed to see the area thriving with new plants like apples, grapes, lemons, and coconuts. He praised Rihanna's efforts and called her a wonderful gardener, which made her very happy. However, Rihanna explained that it still wasn't enough to feed everyone, and that she had a plan to improve things. Rihanna demonstrated the martial arts skills she had learned from Elvin by punching a coconut right off the tree, and then slicing it in half with a kick while in midair. Heel was stunned by her strength. She mixed the lemon juice with coconut water, creating a wonderful drink. Heel tasted the new drink and was captivated by its refreshing flavor and the perfect balance of sweet and sour. It was even better than the fruit juice he'd had before. Just then, they heard a noise coming from the coast. Elvin had just defeated a Satan shell, a terrifying shellfish monster, and was warning everyone to be careful when facing them. Varys said that the others shouldn't even try it, and that Elvin could only do it because he was so strong. Varys continued to squeeze something out of the shell, and Heel asked what it was. Meanwhile, Mappa quickly tasted it and collapsed. Varys explained that the liquid from the Satan shell was a paralytic. Varys joked that it could be a deadly poison, but he soon admitted he was just kidding and said it could be used to produce a valuable purple dye. Afterward, to protect their territory from the killer birds, Satan's shells, and other threats, Heel created 14 new golems, naming them number 1 through number 14. Among them, the golems from number 6 to number 15 were equipped with magic stones. 2 other golems were taught defensive magic, while the remaining 2 learned one of the 4 basic elements. Suddenly, the lookout rang the alarm bell. warning everyone of an approaching horde of Satan's shells. They were pouring in through a section of the wall that hadn't been completed yet. There were 50 of them, making everyone wonder if they could handle them all. Heel asked Varys about their weakness, and Varys replied that the Satan's shells were vulnerable to lightning attacks. After learning this, Heel told Elven to leave it to him, as he wanted to test out the new golems he had just created. Elven agreed and told Heel to call him if there was any trouble. Rhianna offered to join in, since she also knew lightning magic. Heel summoned Golem number 1, and along with numbers 6, 7, 14, and 15, he headed towards the battle with the Satan's shells. As the monsters swarmed over the wall and attacked, Heel ordered Golem numbers 6 and 7 to use a barrier spell for protection. Rhianna immediately cast a lightning spell, quickly taking out many of the monsters. Meanwhile, Elven and Varys monitored the battle's progress. The golems acted like mobile fortresses with high durability. Hyle then directed golem numbers 14 and 15 to attack the Satan's shells with lightning. Feeling the pressure, the monsters used a paralyzing fluid, but the golems easily created shields to block it. This process was repeated continuously with lightning strikes. In the end, Elven was pleased to see the golems perform their duties excellently, protecting Heel from the paralyzing fluid. This battle ended much faster than expected. The golems had used powerful magic throughout the fight, and Heel praised everyone, especially Rhianna, for their help. However, there were still a few surviving monsters. When Heel was attacked from behind by the paralyzing fluid, Rhianna noticed just in time and rushed in to protect him. Elven quickly took care of that monster, but Heel realized Rhianna was lying on top of him, her body covered in the paralyzing fluid, leaving her unable to move. Heel immediately used a healing spell on her. Rhianna thanked him and complained that her body felt all sticky now. Understanding that she must be uncomfortable, Heel hurried to get some water for her. On his way, he happened to find a gem inside the shell of a Satan's shell, which was a very rare occurrence. The gem was quite beautiful, and Heel thought it would look great on Rhianna, so he decided to give it to her. However, Rhianna suddenly became flustered, gave the gem back to him, and ran away. Heel realized that perhaps he had been too hasty and couldn't give her the gem just yet, so he held on to it. The next day, while mining, Hyle was with Fu and Shell during a break. However, Fu didn't want to rest and continued to dig deeper. Heel reminded her not to forget to eat and drink, but Fu just told him not to worry. Since Fu couldn't pass up anything made by a princess, Heel left Golem number 9 there, just in case it needed to ring the alarm bell if something happened. They continued to mine under the golem's protection. Heel realized that Fu truly had more energy than anyone else. Later, they went to Rhianna's place to eat. Today's meal was filled with dishes made from the Satan's shells, which looked so delicious they couldn't resist. It seemed the Satan's shells had made a nest nearby, and thanks to them, they now had a source of high-quality food, dye, and hard shells. However, the ocean current around the Shol Reef had washed up many other things, including the corpse of a monster. Later, they examined the Tyrian purple dye, a famous dye often used by the nobility. Heel decided to use it to make outfits for the whole group. Just then, Elven walked in with a serious expression on his face. Afterward, Elven asked Heel to come with him to the reclaimed land. When they arrived to investigate, Heel saw the corpse of an orc that had gotten stuck in the embankment and been pulled up. Heel recognized the mark on the orc's hand as belonging to the same tribe that had destroyed and burned their homeland. The other goblins became enraged and started kicking the orc's corpse, because it was the orcs who were the cause of their misery. Heel stepped forward to stop them, but no one would listen to him. He felt he had no right to stop them, as their own tribes had been devastated by these very same orcs. At that moment, Princess Rhianna appeared and demanded that everyone stop. She was furious when she saw the goblins kicking the dead bodies, arguing that such an act damaged their tribe's pride. A goblin justified their actions, saying that these orcs were the reason their tribes were destroyed, and had even used their king's corpse as a warning to others. But Rhianna was adamant that they not behave like the orcs. She insisted that Heel should be the one to decide how to handle this matter. She apologized to Heel for the inconvenience and he appreciated her help, as his feelings were the same as what she had expressed to everyone. Heel decided to take responsibility. If he was the leader, he understood that everyone was furious and wanted to vent their anger. But he didn't want them to do something as degrading as kicking corpses. Heel bowed his head and asked everyone to restrain their anger. Everyone felt ashamed of their actions, especially since it had caused their leader to humble himself like that. Elvin and Varys immediately told Heel to raise his head. After that, Heel assigned Varys the task of handling the burial of the orc's body. But soon after, Heel realized that this wasn't the only dead body. The sea was filled with corpses floating everywhere. When they pulled all the bodies up, they discovered not only orc corpses, but also the bodies of kobolds, the goblins' sworn enemies who had also clashed with the orcs. Heel wondered if the orcs and kobolds had fought each other, but that still didn't explain why their bodies had appeared in this remote area. Nearby, Elvin approached and told Heel that something was very strange, because all the wounds on the bodies were absolutely horrific. Many of the scars couldn't have been caused by weapons like axes or swords. Elvin suggested the wounds might be from fangs, based on their size, but these wounds were massive, larger than anything Elvin had ever seen before. Some orc bodies were even missing their entire lower halves. Heel asked if Elvin was implying that they had been attacked by something else. Elvin couldn't be sure, and for the time being, he suggested they bolster their defenses and be on the lookout for any armed ships that might appear. Even Heel, as the Cave King, found this deeply puzzling. He tasked Varys with handling the burials, while Elvin was responsible for strengthening their defenses. Meanwhile, Hyle and Rhianna searched for anything that could be of use, as any advantage for survival was necessary in this situation. Everything around them was in a terrible state. Suddenly, Heel heard a strange sound. He asked Rhianna if she was the one who made that noise, but then realized the sound was coming from a treasure chest. He decided to unlock the chest using his lock-picking skill. When the chest opened, something quickly darted out, and Heel caught it. It was a small puppy. The puppy immediately started scrambling all over him. Heel asked Rhianna what he should do in this situation. But just then, the puppy peed on his clothes. Heel was flustered, while Rhianna burst out laughing and reassured him that she would wash his clothes for him. Looking at the adorable puppy, Heel realized it was a baby kobold. Rhianna hoped everyone would understand that a baby kobold was innocent, and that their tribe needed to take care of it as well. The next day, Hyle resumed mining and extracting minerals. He really enjoyed using the special Orichalcum ice axe that Mappa had crafted. Even so, Heel was still worried about the possibility of a battle on the coast and hadn't figured out a solution. In this situation, the best he could do was continue mining, as there were no clear answers right now. Heel wanted to mine more raw materials that could be used to protect the island. He continued to mine minerals, gathering them and checking his inventory frequently. However, he noticed that he was starting to obtain fewer magic stones, which he needed a lot of to boost Rhianna's magical energy. He also thought that he might need these magic stones for Fu and Varys later on. But for now, there was nothing he could do to change the situation. While examining what he had just mined, Heel came across a new item he had never seen before. This confused him, as not even the mark of the Cave King provided any information about it. The object wasn't a stone, but a chair. Just then, Fu arrived to call for Heel. He asked if she had also come to do some mining. Fu informed him about the problem with the baby kobold. It was crying non-stop, even though Elvin was trying his best to make funny faces to get it to laugh. Even Taryn joined in to try and make the baby kobold laugh, but no matter what he did, it just wouldn't stop crying. Then Fu showed up and kicked Elvin because his scary faces were making the baby kobold cry even harder, instead of making it laugh. Elvin said that he used to do this to make Fu laugh when she was little, but Heel agreed that this time he was only scaring the baby kobold even more. Elvin greeted Heel, and the baby kobold immediately noticed his presence. It quickly ran over and started playing with Heel. It turned out the baby kobold was just looking for Heel, as it had been crying ever since it woke up from its nap. Rihanna remarked that the baby kobold might see Heel as its father, and reminded him that it peeing on him could be its way of marking its territory. Varys added that it's a natural instinct for baby kobolds to imprint on others. Heel then asked Varys about the chest the baby kobold was found in. Varys explained that the chest was shallower than they first thought, as the inside wasn't as deep as it looked from the outside. Varys suspected there was a false bottom in the chest. Even when they tried to open it with an Orichalcum dagger, they couldn't, even though the bottom was just made of wood. Heel recalled that cases like this usually involved a special locking mechanism. He decided to use magic to open the false bottom, and they were thrilled when it worked. Inside, Hyle took out the items hidden within the chest. The false bottom contained 3 books on history, engineering, and scriptures of the Tiberius tribe, along with a white stone. Heel skimmed through the books and discovered the tribe's name, but he was still puzzled about the stone's purpose. The Cave King's mark on him quickly identified it as a thought stone, a type of stone used to store thoughts. Elvin and Rhianna curiously asked what the stone was, while Varys seemed to already know about it. Suddenly, the stone began to glow brightly and activated, projecting a hologram of a female kobold. Heel wondered in surprise who she was, while Rhianna remarked that she was very beautiful. The content stored in the thought stone seemed to be meant for whoever opened the chest seal. The female kobold in the hologram introduced herself as Queen Alhemina of the Tiberius tribe. She introduced herself as Queen Alhemina of the Tiberius tribe and said that the baby kobold in the chest was her newborn son. Elvin felt angry at the Tiberius tribe, but he did nothing but listen silently to the queen's message. Alhemina continued, saying she didn't have much time. Their ship was being pursued by the legendary monster, Leviathan, and they were exhausted from a previous battle with a horde of orcs. Not only that, but their weapons and magic were useless against Leviathan, leaving them with no way to escape its clutches. The queen pleaded for whoever opened the chest to become the baby's adoptive parents. In return for this kindness, she promised the service of the tribe's 2 strongest warriors, who were tasked with protecting the chest, along with secret books that were never to be revealed to outsiders. She earnestly requested that they take good care of the baby and, if possible, let it hear her final words when it grew up. It was an emotional message, saying that the baby's mother, Alhemina, loved it dearly. The baby kobold took it all in as Alhemina's smile and message faded. But being so young, it couldn't yet understand the meaning of her words. The message stored in the thought stone ended there. Everyone was lost in thought about what might have happened to the Tiberius tribe. Elvin was angry that they had abandoned the baby to be raised by someone else, and that the escort warriors the queen mentioned were nowhere to be seen. Rhianna told Elvin not to think so negatively, and he went to inform the guards about the situation. Heel looked into the Tiberius tribe for more information, and Fu told him about the long-standing wars between the Tiberius and Belden tribes over territory. She sadly shared that her own brother had lost his life in that war. Heel was relieved to see that Elvin showed no hostility toward the baby kobold, even after hearing the entire stored message. Fu said that her father would never hate a child, Varys added, explaining that General Elvin blames himself for not being able to protect his son. It turned out that Varys had also lost his brother in the war, but he held no grudge against the baby kobold. Hearing all of this, Heel decided that from now on, he would take care of the baby kobold, much to everyone's delight. He then asked the group what they should name the baby, since its name wasn't mentioned in the stored message. Rhianna suggested that perhaps Queen Alhemina had deliberately not named the child, so that whoever found it could see it as their own and give it a name. Heel asked Rhianna if she had any ideas for a name. After a moment of thought, she suggested naming the baby Riel. Heel liked the name too, and from that moment on, the baby kobold was called Riel. Although he hadn't intended to tame it, Heel realized the baby kobold counted as one of his tamed creatures, which made sense since it would be living in the cave with them. Fu teased Rhianna, saying she had named the baby by combining her name with Heel's. Hearing this, Rhianna blushed in embarrassment. Afterward, Varys reminded them that there was still an important issue to address. They now knew about the giant's mark and its relevance to the situation. The bodies, torn apart and immune to weapons, were all believed to be the work of the legendary monster, Leviathan. Sometime after that incident, Mappa showed up with his new invention and asked Heel to try attacking it with magic. Heel asked again, just to be sure, and after he got confirmation, he unleashed a powerful fire spell to attack it. Mappa's new invention turned out to be a shield equipped on a golem, and it was far more powerful than a regular barrier spell. Heel felt reassured that they could rely on it and asked what the others were doing. Varys told him about another of Mappa's creations, one capable of protecting the island from even giant monsters. Still, Hyle was worried about Leviathan and asked Varys if the monster was truly a legendary creature. Elvin also admitted that he hadn't believed it before. But after the elite troops led by Queen Alhemina failed to stop Leviathan and were completely annihilated, he realized their worries were justified. Just then, Heel heard Riel barking. When he turned to check, he saw Riel was stuck high up on some construction logs. Elvin saw this and immediately went to rescue Riel. He fell in the process, but still managed to save Riel just in time. Rhianna was overjoyed to see that both Riel and General Elvin were safe. Elvin thought to himself that Riel should have been playing in the fields with Rhianna. Rhianna smiled and said that Riel is very energetic, especially when he's out in the fields, where he's always digging around. Heel realized Riel must wander off a lot, making it hard for Rhianna to keep up. Varys explained that kobold children mature very quickly, and before long, Riel would be walking on 2 legs like an adult. Heel was a little surprised to hear that, but it reminded him of the seed he had found in the field earlier. He took it out and asked Varys if he knew what it was. Varys didn't know what it was either, but Rhianna suddenly spoke up, saying it was a seed from Yggdrasil. Heel and Varys were stunned. Even Rhianna herself didn't understand how she knew that. She explained that the words just came out of her mouth on their own. They then realized that the knowledge came from Rhianna's farmer's mark, which had granted her knowledge about all kinds of plants. Varys added that he had heard of Yggdrasil, a giant sacred tree that blesses all living things, but he thought it only existed in legends. Just like the shape-shifting stones. After that, Heel went around the island, looking for a good spot to mine. While he was digging, he realized it was the perfect opportunity to make a field for everyone. He saw that he already had all the materials he needed, and ordered his spiders to start clearing the land. Since his gathering skill only worked in caves, and he needed their help to get rid of all the dirt and rocks. Heel worked non-stop, and by that evening, he had finished clearing a new plot of land for them. He went to the center of the field and decided to plant the Yggdrasil seed there. Rhianna joined Heel and began planting some flower seeds around the area, ones she had brought from her hometown. Heel thought that this would make the place look really nice. Suddenly, Mappa popped up out of nowhere to watch them plant the Yggdrasil seed. Rhianna quickly noticed that the Yggdrasil seed was already sprouting, much faster than usual. Mappa asked them both if they had used a sunstone, but they said no. He suggested they try using one now. When Rhianna used the sunstone on the sapling, it shot up into a tree in just a matter of seconds. Heel knew sunstones were powerful, but the Yggdrasil tree started growing at a tremendous rate. He asked Rhianna if she was sure she only used one sunstone, and she insisted that she had. The 3 of them realized that with such rapid growth, it could be dangerous if they stayed too close to the tree. They immediately started to run. As they ran, Mappa tripped and was engulfed by the sprawling tree trunk. As the tree continued to grow even faster, Heel and Rhianna managed to get to a safe distance. The Yggdrasil tree quickly reached its full size. It was so enormous that it could be seen from the clearing on the other side of the island, where Elvin and Varys also spotted it. Heel and Rhianna looked up, astonished by the sheer size of the Yggdrasil, realizing it was truly worthy of being called a legendary tree. After planting the Yggdrasil, Heel's mind drifted back to his past. Back then, there was a small monster that was constantly being bullied by a group of boys. They would use the poor creature for target practice while it was tied up in chains. Whenever they had free time, they would show up and torment it. The group was led by a boy named Orin, and they were deliberately using the monster to practice their magic, even though they were all top students at the Magic Academy. They were careful not to kill the monster, but the damage they inflicted built up, making its injuries worse over time. Back then, Hyle was too scared to intervene, so he would just wait for them to leave. After they were gone, he would go and tend to the monster's wounds, and he named him Lopes. Hyle remembered how he had cared for Lopes every day, but he felt guilty now because his healing magic had never been strong enough to fully heal him. Lopes's wounds grew increasingly severe, to the point where they could no longer be healed. Hyle wasn't strong enough to break the chains on his body. He feared that if things continued this way, Lopes would die. Hyle decided to stay by Lopes's side until Orin's group returned. When Orin appeared with his followers, he saw Hyle standing in front of Lopes. Orin coldly asked Hyle what he was doing there. Hyle took a deep breath and pleaded with Orin to stop and release Lopes. Orin did not like that request. He removed his glove and slapped Hyle hard across the face, showing his contempt and anger at Hyle's interference. Orin didn't like Hyle begging him to release Lopes, even though Hyle was a member of the royal family. Orin grew angry and ordered Hyle to step aside, calling him a helpless fool and threatening to turn him to ash along with Lopes if he didn't listen. Hyle knew he could do nothing but continue to beg Orin to spare Lopes. He repeated the words, "please," to Orin, over and over again. Orin grew tired of Hyle's pathetic pleading and coldly told him to do whatever he wanted. Hyle was stunned by Orin's change in attitude, but then Orin explained that he had grown bored of this type of training and was done with the monster. Hyle felt a wave of relief hearing that, but immediately after, Orin told him to remove Lopes's chains himself. He said that Hyle could do whatever he wanted, and if he wished to free Lopes, he was allowed to do so. However, Orin stressed that he couldn't let a monster roam free in the capital, and if he saw Lopes again, he would destroy it on sight. Orin gave Hyle a few seconds to act and save Lopes if he could. He began to count down from 10. As the seconds ticked by, Hyle tried with all his might to save Lopes, using a lock-picking tool to undo the chains. However, all his efforts were in vain. The chains were too tight, and Hyle couldn't remove them in time. Lopes, realizing he was about to die, could only offer Hyle a gentle smile. When Orin finished his countdown, all that was left of Lopes was a pile of ash. Hyle collapsed in despair, watching Lopes be destroyed right before his eyes, unable to do anything to save him. Orin had called Hyle pathetic for letting his friend die like that, but in reality, he knew that Hyle wouldn't have been able to do anything to save Lopes. From the very beginning, Hyle had rushed forward to attack Orin but couldn't get close because of Orin's shield. Hyle cried out in anger, while Orin, with a threatening gaze, made it clear that someone as weak as him could never dream of touching someone as powerful as Orin. Later, Hyle recalled waking up in a bed in a hospital. He tried to get up and go back to where Lopes's remains still lay. The pendant around his neck turned out to be Lopes's ashes, something he would always treasure, and he felt guilty for a promise he couldn't keep. He told Rihanna that this was who he truly was, and she reassured him that he wasn't useless at all. She reminded him of his efforts for the Belden tribe and for Lopes, always doing his best to help others. Hearing his story, she teared up and apologized for how much he had gone through in the past. He wondered why he was telling her this story now, and realized he just wanted someone to listen. A moment later, a cheerful Riel approached them. The three of them stood up and began walking through the surrounding trees, and he knew he had only wanted to tell his story to Rihanna. As they passed through the trees, a field full of blooming flowers opened up before them, a place that belonged to Rihanna's homeland. Riel happily ran around the field, then Rihanna called out to Hyle and said that while he could never erase his regrets about Lopes, in the difficult times to come, he shouldn't forget that she and everyone else would always be by his side, that he wasn't alone anymore, that he had a big family, for which he was very grateful to Rihanna. Later, he asked Varys to investigate the Yggdrasil tree further. and discovered its leaves could be used to make ointments and teas, but consuming too much could induce a dreamlike state, so it should be used with caution. The branches were not only light, but also strong enough to be used with Orichalcum tools. They also tried to make a handle for the Orichalcum ice axe from the branches. And after completing many tasks, time flew by quickly until it was time for dinner. He informed Rihanna about dinner, but she said she wasn't tired yet. He told her she could continue tomorrow. So she agreed and put her hammer down. He realized that the Yggdrasil branches also had the effect of reducing fatigue. And this tree truly bestowed all sorts of blessings upon everyone. He looked forward to the new harvest. As the flower fields were always in brilliant bloom, he was glad to see their life on the island becoming richer every day, and soon Riel drifted off to sleep. He went to bed too, wondering what he was going to mine tomorrow. When he woke up in the morning, he found Riel acting strangely and crying. The others also came to see why he was crying. And Heel figured Riel might be having a nightmare. Rihanna tried to comfort Riel, but he couldn't be soothed. Then Heel noticed a mark in Riel's left eye. It turned out to be a crest, and right after that, the area around them suddenly went completely white. Riel's mark sent a signal directly into everyone else's minds, and they saw his memories from the day the Tiberius tribe was annihilated. Countless dead bodies were strewn across the ship's deck, and Alhimana was desperately trying to protect everyone from the monster, but it was just too powerful. It shattered her barrier with ease and snapped her staff, along with her right arm. She tried to cast her shield again, but her efforts were futile, as the monster lunged forward, devouring her and half of the ship. The fear was so overwhelming, Heel's knees almost buckled. Just by seeing the monster, Rihanna and everyone else realized the same thing. They understood the true danger of the Leviathan, causing Heel to break into a cold sweat. After the vision ended, Varys explained that the crest in Riel's eye was called the all-seeing eye. This crest is said to be the eye of a god, meaning that everything they had just witnessed was what Riel saw before he was separated from his mother. The power of the all-seeing eye reached the entire island, and everyone witnessed the horrifying power of the Leviathan. The residents grew anxious, wondering if the Leviathan would attack their island, and what they could possibly do if it did. They were worried, and Heel was too. He wasn't sure what he'd do if the Leviathan came, or if he could truly protect everyone. Elvin shouted, telling everyone to stop looking so grim and remember everything they had overcome so far. If they all worked together with Heel, nothing was impossible. He bolstered everyone's faith in Hiel, who then stood up to speak. He told them all to calm down and to start preparing for the monster's potential attack. While it wasn't a sure thing, they couldn't take a legendary creature lightly. No matter how powerful it was, they would stand together and fight it. He asked everyone to lend him their strength. And after he finished his speech, he began to think about their next move. After witnessing Alhimana's fight against the Leviathan, he knew his own magic would be useless. So he asked Mappa if Orichalcum weapons would have any effect. Mappa wasn't sure, and they all pondered the question. He racked his brain for a solution. He came up with the idea of using the place deep inside the cave where he'd found the golem to use as a shelter, and they could build a cold storage room right beside it for supplies. But Elvin pointed out that it could collapse if the monster attacked the island, and suggested they retreat instead. Heel said he had an idea for that as well, and began shaping a special place for a different purpose. Afterwards, he wanted to mine for new materials and discuss it with the others. All this time, the island had developed significantly thanks to new discoveries underground. He suspected that Shol Reef was still full of mysteries. This meant there was a chance that something lay dormant deep in the caves, something that could fight back against a creature like the Leviathan. He wouldn't know for sure unless he checked it out. So Varys suggested that he take Riel with him. This time, he thought Riel's all-seeing eye might prove useful. So he set out with Riel on his back. Not long after they started their search, Riel fell asleep without having done a thing. He figured Riel would wake up soon, so he decided to explore on his own for the time being. And so the entire island began working together to come up with ways to build a defense plan against Leviathan. They didn't have to worry about wood, thanks to the Yggdrasil tree, and soon the construction of the defensive walls was nearly complete. When Riel woke up and started barking, he thought he might have discovered something. But it turned out he just wanted to pee. Throughout the exploration, Riel remained somewhat agitated. But thanks to his ability to see through rock, Riel helped Heel find large ore deposits that not even he could find. After a few weeks, Riel started acting more energetic than before, pointing to a high place full of ore. Everyone was confused and thought Riel wanted them to mine there. But the problem they faced in doing so was the lack of optimal light in that spot. He wondered if that would be okay. But he believed that Riel had surely found something. He knew that if he mined carefully, everything would be fine. But as soon as he struck the ground, he fell into a secret cave right beneath that spot. Inside, he saw a giant suit of armor lying there, with a sword 5 times the size of his body. He realized that the thing in the armor was a golem, and it didn't have a heartstone yet. The armor looked like it was made of Orichalcum, but the sword seemed to be made of something even stronger. He wanted to get a closer look at the sword's material, so he struck it with his hammer. The sound from the blow echoed throughout the entire cave, reaching Mappa's ears. Heel realized that he couldn't simply break the sword because its metal was even stronger than Orichalcum. Suddenly, Mappa appeared behind him like a ghost. He didn't realize when Mappa had arrived. When Mappa saw the sword, his eyes were filled with awe at its beauty, and he was so overjoyed that he began to worship it like a god. Hyle wondered what was going on and why Mappa was more excited than usual. Mappa then carried the heavy sword back to the surface himself to work on it. Mappa worked on the sword with the help of the other blacksmiths, but he seemed to be having trouble with something. The other blacksmiths informed Hale that there wasn't enough heat to melt the sword. Just then, Rihanna appeared and saw the sword. Heel asked her to help him melt the sword by combining his magical energy with the forge's power. They used fire magic, and the forge's power increased many times over, then immediately put the sword inside it. After the melting process succeeded, the molten material was taken out. After being processed into raw material, he took a little to inspect it, and it turned out to be mithril, the metal said to be the hardest, which was lost because of the gods. It had the ability to kill even gods, along with the ability to be imbued with magic. Heel was overjoyed to have achieved this and thanked Riel for helping him find the sword. Now, for the next part, he believed Mappa could use the mithril to create the greatest weapon. Finally, their defensive wall was complete, and the restored land now looked like a fortress, which was great as they prepared to face a legendary creature. They continued to devise other plans to defeat it, and this was the beginning of Sheol's first major battle. That night, he noticed Elvin was with Riel. Then Rihanna quietly came up behind him and gestured for him to be silent, to watch what would happen next together. Elvin bowed his head and apologized to Riel for what he had said about his mother before, admitting that she was truly a great warrior and asking him to keep watching as they would avenge his mother together. Heel and Rihanna heard this. Then Riel gently placed his hands over his eyes, causing him to cry out a little in pain. Now, things were gradually getting better internally. All that was left was to trust in Sheol's strength. If Leviathan appeared, they would be ready. After some time, the lookouts rang the alarm bell, and Heel rushed to check what was happening. Elvin reported that 2 ships had appeared on the ocean, and Varys handed him a telescope to see for himself. Looking through the telescope, he saw the emblem of the same orc tribe that had attacked the Belden tribe before. It turned out they were the survivors of an orc tribe, and Elvin was furious, thinking that if they had come to attack the island, they wouldn't be shown any mercy. Suddenly, something enormous appeared in the ocean, a certain distance from the ships. The ships began to attack it, and Heel noticed that they were actually trying to flee from something terrifying. Riel had started to bark, and Heel understood that something was very wrong here. He could feel an immense amount of magic emanating from the sea right now, and what they saw next horrified everyone. It's the legendary creature Leviathan, emerging from the sea with a colossal shadow that seemed to touch the sky, along with a terrifying roar that made the surrounding waves rage wildly. The orc warriors on the ship were trying their best to confront the Leviathan, but their projectiles had no effect. At this point, defeating this ferocious monster seemed nearly impossible. Heel wanted to save the remaining ship, and Elvin quickly rang the bell to get everyone's attention. He instructed everyone not to just stand there, but to prepare for the upcoming battle by getting into the positions they had practiced all week. Heel was worried if saving the orcs, their enemies, would be too much for Elvin. But Elvin insisted that he wasn't doing this to save the orcs, but simply thought it best to attack the Leviathan while it was distracted by the ship. Heel understood, and then instructed Fu to order everyone to evacuate toward the cave as planned. Fu obeyed and told everyone preparing for battle that they must not die, no matter the cost. Heel was confident in his team, and with a smile, they began their fight against the monster Leviathan. Varys followed, giving instructions to prepare the heavy ballista and bring out the arrow. The goblins worked together to prepare the ballista weapon, and the arrow for it was made from mithril. Mappa had poured his very soul into crafting this arrow, and it was powerful enough to pierce through anything. They aimed the arrow towards the Leviathan, and as the Leviathan drew closer to the ship, they saw their moment and fired the arrow. The arrow flew with incredible speed, but just as it was about to strike the Leviathan, the monster dodged it with ease. Heel knew that even if the projectiles couldn't wound it, the mithril arrow certainly would, which was why the Leviathan had dodged. However, since the arrow had caught its attention, the Leviathan now considered Sheol its primary target. Sensing the impending danger, Heel ordered everyone to load the next arrow, while he would hold off the Leviathan with his golems, and asked Rhianna to prepare for the next strategy. He summoned golems number 10 and 11 with ice magic, and numbers 12 and 13 with wind magic, together forming a combination attack, Mega Blizzard, aimed at the Leviathan, but the Leviathan didn't flinch or slow down, continuing to advance on them at the same speed. They realized that magic was truly having no effect. But they had another plan, to freeze the water around it. Heel thought that if they did so, it would be fine and would render it immobile. But to their surprise, the Leviathan shattered all the ice and began to charge a massive energy beam. Heel knew the situation was getting worse, so he immediately summoned golems number 6 and 7 to create a shield at a specific angle to redirect the attack instead of meeting it head-on. As the Leviathan charged its powerful energy beam, it unleashed it upon the defensive wall. The beam slammed into the shield held by the golems, reinforced with shield magic. They had to pour all of their strength just to hold the shield steady. It unleashed powerful shockwaves, causing the entire area to tremble. Then, the shield began to tear apart at the edges as the damage continued to mount. They used every last bit of their strength and barely managed to deflect the attack in another direction, causing a massive explosion in the sea. They had just barely escaped the danger, but the Leviathan was already starting to approach them again. Rhianna informed Elvin that the heavy ballista was ready again, and Elvin prepared to use it. Heel noticed something was wrong as the Leviathan continued to charge towards them, which meant it was confident it could dodge the arrow even at such a short distance. They fired the arrow, but this time they used a different strategy that would prevent the Leviathan from noticing the arrow. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the outcome, and then the arrow successfully struck the Leviathan, actually piercing through its body. The Leviathan hadn't noticed the arrow because Rhianna had used a concealment spell, making the arrow invisible. Everyone was ecstatic that they had succeeded in hitting the monster, but Elvin told them to calm down, as they had only managed to land one hit. The arrow, it turned out, was tied to a sturdy rope, made from a combination of spider silk and steel wire. Heel ordered everyone to hold on tight and not let the Leviathan escape. He counted from 1 to 5 as the monster was pulled closer, and when it reached the designated area, multiple golems hidden in the sea shot out their hands, which were connected to sturdy metal wires. and bound the monster from all directions. The Leviathan resisted fiercely, and it even began to break the restraints, which couldn't hold for long. They informed Heel that he needed to act immediately, and they had already prepared another bolt for the heavy ballista, this time aiming for the Leviathan's head to finish it off. As the Leviathan was cornered, numerous things began to emerge from beneath its scales and spread across the area, including onto the golems. Heel was horrified to see countless small sea stalkers, parasitic monsters that latch onto giant sea creatures. It turned out they had been hiding under the Leviathan's scales all this time and were a major threat in their own right. These parasites broke the arm of Golem number 1, and before they could cause more damage, Heel quickly ordered everyone to shoot down the sea stalkers immediately. However, their numbers were overwhelming, and they even started clinging to the defensive wall. They tried their best to keep them from climbing up, all while the Leviathan was still struggling violently, causing several other golems to be taken down as well. Heel never expected the situation to unfold. To make matters worse, the horns on the Leviathan's back began to grow larger and more menacing. They guessed this might be an even more dangerous attack than before. Just as they predicted, the horns detached from the Leviathan's body and spread out everywhere, raining down like a powerful volley of arrows. Heel immediately created another shield and told everyone to gather behind him for protection. The horns fell everywhere, each one containing enough power to destroy the entire defensive wall on its own. Thanks to Heel's shield, they barely escaped that terrifying assault with their lives. But just when they thought it was over, the reality was far from what they imagined. The Leviathan's tail suddenly appeared right in front of them. So fast they had no time to process what was happening. The monster's enormous tail swept across the area, destroying everything in its path. The impact from the Leviathan's tail echoed to the deepest parts of the cave, where the residents had been evacuated. The terrifying sounds made everyone in the cave fearful, hoping this nightmare would end soon. The children trembled, afraid they would lose their home once again. The mothers reassured their children, telling them not to worry because their master, the island's hero, wouldn't let that happen. Heel would surely set things right again. Meanwhile, the Leviathan's tail attack had wiped a vast area clean, as if it had never existed. Fortunately, Heel was only sent flying by the impact, and was caught in time by Shol, landing safely. He got back up, remembering how Golem number 6 and 7 had protected him earlier, allowing him to survive. He called out to the others, but there was only thick dust, making him worry that they might be in trouble since no one answered. Meanwhile, the small sea stalkers continued to climb the wall and swarmed around Heel, leaving him with few options. He knew the situation would be dire if the sea stalkers invaded the island, so he tried to hold them back with the lightning attacks. However, he realized his magical energy was nearly depleted, and his attacks were much weaker than before. Heel was slowly being cornered and told Shol to run. Just then, Rihanna appeared, using her weapon to wipe out dozens of sea stalkers in the blink of an eye. Heel felt relieved to see that Rihanna was safe, and she declared that she wouldn't let anything touch Heel, whom she revered. He expressed his happiness that she was okay, and Rihanna was equally glad to see him unharmed. Immediately after, a volley of arrows flew from behind and struck the sea stalkers. Heel turned around and realized the arrows came from the others, who were trying their best to protect him. He was overjoyed to see they were also safe, along with the other goblins and golems. They all attacked the sea stalkers in unison on Princess Rihanna's command, taking down as many as they could. Elvin apologized to Heel for being late, but Heel was just happy that they were all safe and sound. However, the Leviathan began another frantic assault, and even the large golems couldn't withstand a single one of its blows. The monster still stood tall, making everyone realize the danger before them. Heel knew there was no other choice. He ordered everyone to prepare for their final strategy. Rihanna told Heel that it was too dangerous, but he knew he had to do it, no matter how slim the chances. This strategy had a higher probability of defeating the Leviathan, especially since the monster was already so close to the mainland. Rihanna, worried for him, took Heel's hand and transferred all of her remaining magical energy to him, ensuring he would have enough strength to defeat the Leviathan. Heel accepted the responsibility and prepared to act alone. As the Leviathan prepared to strike again, he hit it right in the mouth before it could gather magic for its attack. Heel deliberately drew the Leviathan's attention and made it chase after him in a rage, destroying everything in its path, including land and structures. At that moment, Heel was riding on Taran's back and asked her to run as fast as she could to the planned location. He was in a place where no one could help him, left to trust only in himself to face the colossal monster. Elvin looked around and realized there was still something he could do to help Heel. He ran to a heavy ballista and began to pull the string. Varys warned that the ballista's winch was broken, so they couldn't draw the string back. But Elvin, with the pride of a great warrior, couldn't just stand by and watch Heel risk his life. He was determined to do everything he could to help his friend in this final battle. Trying to pull the string with all his might, and Mappa joined in to help him. Meanwhile, the Leviathan coiled its massive body around Heel's area to trap him. Just then, a few cannonballs from the Orc's ship from before struck the Leviathan, aiming for its knee. Immediately after, a mithril arrow hit the Leviathan in the eye. It was a coordinated shot from Elvin and Mappu. With the path ahead cleared, Heel quickly advanced to the location where he had set a trap. Just as planned, he raised his hand as a signal to Riel, who could observe everything with her clairvoyance. Receiving the signal, Riel aimed right at the rock in front of them and used her power to shatter it, creating a chain reaction in the cave. As a result, the Leviathan fell into a large sinkhole that had been prepared under the reclaimed area. This pit was large enough to contain the Leviathan's entire massive body. This was Heel's backup plan, in case the ballista wasn't enough to take down the monster. He had destroyed the pillars to make the Leviathan fall. Now, for the final part of the plan, Heel had to face the Leviathan directly. He took out a mithril hammer and began to scatter hundreds of stones around. At this moment, the mark on his body asked if he wanted to mine, and he realized he would rely on his enhanced mining strength to destroy the Leviathan. The Leviathan fired another beam of magical energy, but Heel quickly dodged it. Then, he leapt straight towards the Leviathan, using the power of the Cavern King to smash the monster. The mark understood his command, and he swung the hammer with the full power of the Cavern King. The mithril hammerhead transformed into the ultimate god-slaying metal. The mark on Heel's body shone more brilliantly than ever before. In the next moment, everyone on the surface witnessed a blinding light spreading from deep below. Everyone saw the light erupting from underground, created by the strike of Heel's mithril hammer, straight into the Leviathan's head, crushing it to pieces. His attack dealt a fatal blow to the legendary monster, and the impact reverberated throughout the Leviathan's colossal body. The force of the strike was great enough to crack the Leviathan's entire frame. This was how the Cavern King, Heel, defeated the legendary beast. Afterward, Heel grabbed the rope to return to the surface. However, in its dying moments, the Leviathan let out one final roar, which echoed throughout the cave and all the way to the surface. The roar caused the surrounding rocks to tremble, and the people holding the rope lost their grip, causing Heel to fall. Blood gushed from his mouth from the immense pressure of the sound. Just then, Taran quickly caught the rope and saved him once again. She pulled him up quickly as the entire cave was on the verge of collapse. Rihanna quickly jumped down to save Heel. She took another rope from Taran and grabbed Heel in midair. She told him to hold on tight until they escaped safely. However, Heel was worried that she wouldn't be able to escape in time if she tried to hold on to him. But Rihanna adamantly refused and told him not to give up, promising they would survive together. As they continued trying to escape the cave, larger boulders began to fall. Suddenly, a giant shadow appeared before them, stunning Rihanna. However, the creature didn't attack. Instead, it caught both of them and carried them out of the cave. They wondered who this creature was and why it had saved them. On their way out, they encountered a large boulder blocking the path. The monster told them not to worry and quickly shattered the boulder, clearing the way. Finally, the three of them escaped the cave safely. Heel asked the creature who it was, and the creature expressed surprise to learn that a human had defeated the Leviathan. It turned out they were kobolds, creatures searching for their prince. They recognized a peculiar scent and asked if a young kobold might have drifted to this island in a box. Elvin rushed over to see if Heel was safe and immediately recognized the kobolds. It seemed he knew them well, and they in turn recognized Elvin and Varys, calling them by their old names. They knew the story of their tribe being driven from their homeland. Two of the kobolds, named Ash and Kyun, introduced themselves as the two guards assigned to protect Riel. Varys had known this all along, and their appearance confirmed it. This meant they must have heard Alhimana's message, and that the child was indeed here. Shortly after, Riel ran towards Heel, while Ash and Kyun were overjoyed to see that Riel was safe. As Riel reached Heel, both Ash and Kyun knelt, expressing their joy that Riel was unharmed, and apologized for failing to protect him. They considered it the greatest failure of their lives. Heel was happy to see Riel reunited with his protectors, even though Riel was too young to understand what was happening. Elvin asked Ash how they had reached the island. Ash explained that after drifting at sea for 2 days and on the verge of sinking, they were rescued by Camus, an orc pirate from the Corvus tribe. As they were talking, a boat began to approach the island. Elvin asked Ash if he was going to join the fight, and Ash replied that he should meet Camus. He also mentioned that their ship was severely damaged, making it difficult to set sail. The last bombardment had depleted their ammunition, and Ash told Elvin that if he wanted revenge, now was his chance, as their lives were in his hands. The boat arrived with 2 orcs on the island, and they weren't sure what to say. Just then, Heel spoke up, introducing himself as the Lord of Shol Reef. One of the other orcs introduced himself as Camus, leader of the Corvus tribe. Camus was surprised, noting how impressed he was by the earlier battle, and was now even more stunned to discover that this island full of monsters was ruled by a human. Camus, who was 3 times Heel's size, even by orc standards, also recognized Elvin, whom he had met before. Elvin told Camus that his name had been changed. Even though they had saved each other's lives, Elvin clearly remembered that it was the Corvus tribe who had destroyed their homeland. He wondered how they could ever settle this debt with the orcs. Camus replied that perhaps it was destiny that brought them together again. Then, Camus placed his sword on the ground and knelt, offering his life as he felt responsible for what the Corvus tribe had done. Camus begged Elvin to spare his tribe in exchange for his life. Elvin could see that Camus was resolute. However, an orc standing behind Camus spoke up, saying it wasn't Camus' fault, but that of a traitor. Camus quickly stopped him, telling his comrade not to humiliate him further and to let him die as he had decided. Heel listened to everything and prepared to speak. But before he could, Elvin shouted, demanding that everyone be silent and listen to Heel. Heel then told Camus that, regardless of his decision, things couldn't just end here. Heel wanted to know what really happened, so he let the other orcs explain. They explained that their tribe used to have an orc named Claude, who was the second in command and also a traitor. Claude waited until Camus was away on an expedition to target their main base and steal part of the fleet. This happened because Claude was dissatisfied with Camus' lenient methods and had swayed some of the orcs to his side, telling them they deserved more power and fame with the wealth they had acquired. It was heartbreaking to see so many orcs turn their backs on Camus. As soon as Camus heard the news, he rushed back to reclaim the fleet. But it was too late, as Claude had already caused chaos. Heel realized that it was Claude who had attacked the Belden tribe. While they were fighting Claude, the Leviathan had appeared in the middle of the battle, making the situation even worse. Heel also realized that the corpses and half-eaten bodies that had previously washed up on his island belonged to Claude's faction. Camus then admitted that the fracturing of his tribe was his failure, and he felt guilty for letting the flag he inherited from his ancestors be sullied. Heel felt sympathy for Camus. Elvin said that Camus should have kept his people united. If he had, the Belden tribe's homeland would not have been attacked. Elvin drew his sword, demanding that Camus take responsibility. Kamyu accepted, keeping his promise, and felt that being struck down by Elven would be a worthy price to pay. Heel tried to stop Elven. But to everyone's surprise, Elven swung his sword without killing Kamyu. Instead, he offered the sword to Kamyu and challenged him to a one-on-one duel as a test for the leader of the Corvus tribe. Kamyu agreed to the duel, and everyone else stood by to watch how the situation would unfold. Fu was worried for Elven, since his opponent was the leader of the Orc tribe, thinking that Elven should at least use a shield to defend himself. However, Rihanna stopped him from interfering in the fight, forcing Heel to stand still and focus his full attention on the confrontation. Kamyu looked at Elven and said that he was ready to lay down his life for the Belden tribe. But since they were in a duel of honor, Kamyu swore that he would not go easy on Elven. Elven had no intention of holding back either, and was completely confident in his abilities. Everyone, from Heel and Rihanna to the goblins, watched the fight intently. Elven wielded a pull-string axe, while Kamyu used his sword. The duel began, and neither wasted a second, charging in to attack immediately. Kamyu easily dodged Elven's first axe swing and quickly struck at his left shoulder. Immediately after, Kamyu delivered another powerful blow that made Elven drop his weapon. Heel was astonished by the speed and precision of the attacks. But Elven didn't falter. He quickly picked up his axe and continued the fight. Kamyu remarked that no one had ever dodged his blade so many times. He attacked relentlessly, creating small cuts all over Elven's body, showcasing his masterful skill. Fu watched from the sidelines, worried for his father as he saw the unfavorable situation. However, Elven began to regain his footing, increasing the speed of his attacks, and this time tried to strike Kamyu from behind. Kamyu, with his vast experience, saw the intention. He quickly countered by deflecting the axe's trajectory in mid-air, just slightly causing it to boomerang back towards Elven. Now, Elven was facing two attacks from his own axe and from Kamyu's sword. Just then, Elven made a surprising move that stunned all the onlookers. He intentionally let Kamyu's sword pierce through his hand, preventing Kamyu from using any of his sword techniques. Then, Elven intended to break the sword, but the fight quickly turned into a battle of pure, raw strength. Kamyu warned Elven not to be fooled by his appearance, because he was still an orc, and orcs are generally much stronger than goblins. In the struggle, Kamyu gradually began to overpower Elven with his superior strength. But Elven retorted that he didn't care what Kamyu said, because he was about to make a joke out of that strength. He believed in himself that even though orcs were stronger than ordinary goblins, he was still the great warrior of the Belden tribe. Right after that, Elven's warrior's mark activated, dramatically increasing his physical strength. He lifted Kamyu into the air, even though Kamyu was much heavier and larger than him. Kamyu was in shock, unable to believe that a goblin could lift him like that. Elven then slammed Kamyu's body onto the ground, causing Kamyu to spit up blood. Not stopping there, Elven also broke Kamyu's sword with his bare hands, marking the end of the duel. The goblins rejoiced, proud of their leader. They quickly ran over to check on both of them. Elven smiled and said that orcs always have thick skulls, so Kamyu would be just fine. And sure enough, a moment later, Kamyu regained consciousness and admitted his defeat with the straightforwardness and pride of a warrior. Kamyu asked Elven to finish him off right there. However, Elven surprisingly replied that from now on, Kamyu's life belonged to him, and he wouldn't let him waste it like that. Kamyu was stunned by those words, unable to believe it. Elven then stepped forward and declared himself the winner of the duel in front of everyone. He proclaimed that he had defeated the Corvus tribe, sending the goblins into a state of euphoria. Afterward, Elven went to apologize to Heel for stepping in and showing off like that on his own. Heel just smiled, as he understood Elven's nature well and thanked him for his help. Heel told Kamyu that he could stay on the island for a while to prepare his ship again. He also allowed Kamyu to gather his tribe, and Kamyu promised to do so, while also pledging not to cause any trouble. Just then, Fu came running and immediately gave Elven a hard kick, making him cry out in pain. Confused, Elven asked her what she was doing. Fu just moved closer and rested her head against him, clearly very worried about him. She reminded Elvin that she had asked him not to be so reckless anymore, which made him feel a warmth at her concern. Now that everything was settled, Commu declared that from now on, he would take care of the orcs, and asked the other members of his tribe to greet Heal with reverence. With this, over 100 members of the Corvus tribe became Heal's guests. The long, stressful day left Heal feeling anxious and exhausted. Meanwhile, Ash and Hyun decided to follow the queen's orders and serve Riel's foster parents. They saw that the Belden tribe had received titles from Heal, so they also wanted to be named by him, just like the others. Heal agreed, but reminded them that he only granted the taming ability to impart the effect of his mark, and that it didn't mean they would become his subordinates. He named Ash as Ashton and Kyan as Highness, and asked them to protect their comrades from now on. Heal realized that things were definitely going to get busier from now on. Varys also announced that he would prepare additional living space for the other members. Suddenly, Heal felt a sharp headache, as his body still hadn't fully recovered and he was running a fever. Rhaena immediately said she would take him to his room to rest, and Varys agreed to handle the remaining tasks. Heal tried to refuse, saying it was nothing too serious, but Rhaena wouldn't listen. She insisted on picking him up and carrying him to his room, leaving Heal feeling completely flustered and embarrassed by her care. Commu and Highness looked at each other, realizing the situation was a bit strange, but Rhaena was too innocent to understand what they were thinking. She continued to carry Heal to his room without any hesitation. Heal silently understood that Rhaena was right. He really needed to rest and decided to leave everything to Varys and focus on recovering. Meanwhile, Varys began to think about how to deal with the giant corpse of the Leviathan. Suddenly, Mappa tried eating a piece of its meat and immediately started dancing with joy, indicating that the meat was delicious. Varys then ordered golems number 10 and 11 to turn the cave under the reclaimed land into a cold storage facility, turning the Leviathan into a food source for the entire group. He also knew that they needed to salvage the damaged golems from under the sea. The orcs had offered to help, as they had boats and experience with the sea. Varys agreed and gave them ropes to tie up the golems. Heal hoped that the orcs and goblins could get along, regardless of their past conflicts. He understood that while it would take time, this harmony was achievable. The golems' heartstones had survived thanks to the Orichalcum shields, which meant he could repair and reuse them. Meanwhile, in Eel's room, Rhaena continued to take care of him, preparing his food and tending to his needs. She told him he needed to eat well and tenderly fed him each spoonful. Heal felt at ease with her dedicated care and began to feel better. In addition, the medicine from the Yggdrasil tree was starting to take effect, helping him recover quickly. Even so, Heal told Rhaena not to worry so much because he would be fine soon. Rhaena reassured him that taking care of him wasn't a burden, and that she enjoyed being with him like this. She encouraged him to rest more, because sometimes it's necessary to just relax. Although he enjoyed Rhaena's attention, Heal didn't want to rest for too long while everyone else was busy working. He was eager to get back to mining. Meanwhile, deep in the caves, a group of goblins continued their mining work, preparing for the tasks ahead. The goblin group noticed that the surrounding area was warmer than other places. As they continued to mine, they encountered something unexpected. Water began to gush out from where they had just dug. At first, they thought it was a disaster, but it turned out to be a blessing. It was a hot spring. The next day, Heal reflected on his journey so far, from setting sail to an abandoned coral reef, saving a shipwreck, and defeating legendary monsters. After overcoming so many hardships, he realized he was now facing his greatest challenge yet, having to share a hot spring with Rhaena. While Rhaena felt completely at ease, Heal couldn't help but feel flustered and shy in this situation. It all started last week, on the day they discovered the hot spring. During his recovery, Heal tried to get up and use his mining hammer, but the pain made it impossible for him to even swing it. Rhaena had found him in pain and reminded him that he needed to rest and not overdo it. Heal apologized to her again for making her worry. Commu passed by and teased Heal, calling him a sinful man for making his girl worry so much. Heel was surprised to see Camus and the others there as well. Camus explained that he was just passing through while Rihanna was giving him a tour of the island. Rihanna then gave Heel his repaired clothes, having used spider silk to make them even more durable than before. Heel thanked her, and Ashton remarked that the island was full of surprises. At first, it looked like just a small coral reef, but it actually had a vast system of underground tunnels, sophisticated forging equipment, and even Camus, who had traveled through many lands, had never seen an Yggdrasil tree before. Heel was happy to hear this and expressed his desire to continue developing the island into a livable place. He encouraged them to freely explore anything that caught their attention. Camus agreed and pledged that they would try to become official residents of the island. Although there was still some hesitation from the goblins about how to cooperate with the orcs, Camus understood that things like this take time. Fu reassured him that everything would be fine, because if they could get along with a human like Heel, then understanding each other was just a matter of time. One day, Camus expressed his gratitude for Heel's kindness and asked him how he managed to build a unified land by being kind to monster species. Heel replied that it was a long story, starting with the fact that he came from the Sandfales region and that the Shol Reef was once a part of it. The name Sandfales caught Camus' attention. Shortly after, Fu arrived and announced that a new problem had occurred. A hot spring had unexpectedly erupted from underground. Heel and the others immediately went to check it out. There, Varys asked about his health, and Heel said he felt well enough to walk around. He also remarked that a hot spring was a wonderful discovery for the island. Elvin was also thrilled about the hot spring, as he absolutely loved them. Meanwhile, Fu remained calm and asked what he would do if the cave flooded with water from the hot spring. The mining goblins reported back that the water flow hadn't stopped yet. Heel turned to Fu to ask if she had any ideas on how to solve this, but she wasn't sure, as she had never encountered a similar situation in her homeland. Heel thought for a moment and decided to prioritize checking if the hot spring water was safe. Suddenly, Mappa appeared out of nowhere and started enjoying the hot spring all by himself. Elvin was furious because he wanted to be the first one to take a dip. Varys reassured Heel that the water seemed safe, since Mappa wasn't having any issues after soaking in it. He also offered to run more tests later to be sure. Heel was grateful for everyone's help and went over to Mappa to ask if he had any ideas on how to channel the water from inside the cave to the outside. Varys thought this would be very difficult, since normally, hot spring water is channeled from the top of a mountain downwards. But here, the hot spring was deep inside a cave, making it complicated to pipe the water out. While relaxing, Mappa got an idea and immediately ran straight to the forge. He drew up a plan with some new designs he had just thought of and presented it to Heel. Heel quickly understood Mappa's idea and saw that it was very feasible. They immediately started working, and Heel took ore from his storage. Camus was surprised to see him do that and watched the whole process as everyone got busy making multiple iron pipes from a mold. Mappa then modified golems number 8 and number 9. They could now create a stream of fire with magic from their arms, which could be used to connect the pipes by melting their edges together. This was the beginning of a huge project to bring the hot water above ground. Mappa had invented some new devices that would pump the water out of the cave. Not wanting to waste the water by just bringing it up, Heel instructed Camus and the others to build a public bath on the surface. Heel wanted to help with the project a bit, but Rihanna stopped him. So he had no choice but to let everyone else handle it. After a week, the construction and everything else was complete. Now, all that was left to do was bring the hot water up to the surface. Heel liked how the giant bathhouse had turned out, and Camus wondered if the water would actually flow all the way up here, since he had never witnessed contraptions like this in action before. Mappa then finished the underground machinery and equipment using Golem number 10's wind magic. And on the surface, Mappa activated the machine and the mechanism began to work. Everyone eagerly waited for water to flow from the statue that was connected to the pipes and machinery. It didn't seem to work at first, so Mappa gave it a hard smack with his hand, and the machine started working. Hot water gushed from the statue's mouth. Heel was delighted to see it work out, and Fu and Elvin, also overjoyed, quickly headed for the hot spring. Comyu then told Elvin that he could be the first one to take a bath. But before he could finish his sentence, Elvin kicked Comyu, sending him flying into the bath. Comyu was startled by the sudden fall, and Elvin ignored him, telling everyone else to get ready to get in. He told everyone to prepare themselves for a bath instead of just jumping in like Comyu did. Afterward, all the elves and orcs bathed together. It felt as if the hot spring had washed away all their fatigue. Elvin teased Comyu, calling him weak for getting tired from just this much work. Comyu felt insulted to hear something like that about his beautiful body. Then, another orc jumped into the conversation, telling Comyu about his own body. He started showing it off, proud of his own impressive physique. While Ashton and Highness were doting on Rael like a princess instead of a prince, Heel arrived and was happy to see everyone having a wonderful time. Then he overheard Elvin mentioning that Fu wasn't in the hot spring. This brought a problem to Heel's attention. Apparently, he had forgotten to separate the baths for men and women, but he realized that no one here was conscious of it, as both genders were enjoying the hot bath as if it were normal. He was startled to see the naked women and asked Varys why he hadn't separated them. Then another thing caught his attention. Someone else was also around. It was Rhianna, and she was enjoying the bath, walking around casually. She came over and offered to wash his back. At that moment, his inner thoughts began to run wild, making it hard for him to decide whether to use this to his advantage or just accept their ways. But he felt too embarrassed to let things be. Heel immediately ran off, making the excuse that he was feeling dizzy. Rhianna was confused by Heel's sudden action. Heel went into a cave, feeling like someone was watching him, even though he could have just bathed with the others. He admitted to himself that he wanted to join them. But he would feel like he was deceiving them because even if they weren't aware of such things, he was. After a while, he reached the place where the hot spring was discovered. He got into the bath and enjoyed it, feeling relieved of his stress and exhaustion. He looked at the machinery and believed that Mappa was definitely a genius. Then Rhianna arrived and found Heel bathing alone. He asked why she was here, and she said she couldn't leave him alone. She guessed that Heel wanted to bathe somewhere quiet, away from all the noise, and she asked if she could join him, putting him in a situation. That was one of the greatest dangers he could possibly face. He was incredibly flustered, feeling like his dignity and pride were on the line, while Rhianna acted completely normal about it and told him to look at the shiny rock in front of them that looked like a star. Heel was trying to calm himself down by focusing on looking through his inventory. Then, Rhianna said she had something important to talk to him about. Heel listened quietly as Rhianna confessed her thoughts. She said she felt guilty for not being able to clear up the feelings between the Beldan tribe and the orcs. Even though she knew Comyu wasn't at fault, the goblins still harbored a deep-seated fear because their homes had once been destroyed, and that trauma would forever remain in their minds. However, she was still very happy to see the Beldan and Corvus tribes starting to cooperate. Eating and enjoying the hot spring together, that brought her true happiness. Heel looked at Rhianna and reassured her that there was no need to apologize, as he understood how difficult it is to overcome the past. Heel told Rhianna to look at their island, a place with goblins, slimes, cave spiders, golems, kobolds, a naked old man, and even humans. The miracle was that they were all living together in harmony. Hearing this, Rhianna felt relieved and leaned her head against Heel's back, unconsciously drifting off to sleep without realizing it. Heel was taken by surprise, feeling incredibly flustered and tense, to the point where he just wanted to run away. But then he remembered everything Rhianna had done since the battle with Leviathan. Even though she was just as exhausted as he was, she had worked tirelessly to help him recover and to support everyone else. He was truly grateful to her from the bottom of his heart. He silently thanked Rhianna and decided to stay still, letting her rest against him without waking her up. When Rhianna woke up, she apologized for having fallen asleep. While Heel was feeling dizzy from soaking in the hot spring for too long, causing the blood to rush to his head. Even so, he was happy to have finally been able to relax. Feeling that his body had completely recovered, Heel felt overjoyed. The thought of getting back to mining moved him to tears. Seeing his joy, Fu and Rihanna also smiled happily with him, knowing that Heel was truly back to his old self. Kamyu came to congratulate Heel on his full recovery and asked if he had a moment to talk. They went out to an open area with fresh air. Kamyu handed Heel a scroll, calling it a surprise gift to celebrate his recovery. When Heel unrolled the scroll, he realized it was the blueprint for a seaport. Heel asked Kamyu if he had made it himself, and Kamyu replied that Varys had asked him to create the design. They thought the reclaimed land could be a good base for a port. Kamyu had also heard that Heel once intended to trade with the outside world, but had to dismantle the Belden tribe's ships due to a lack of wood. Kamyu suggested that they could use the Corvus tribe's ships, after finishing the repairs on the damage Leviathan had caused to their hulls. However, he also stressed that they would need a proper port and dock model. During the design process, Kamyu got a little carried away, creating a blueprint of exceptional quality. Heel noticed the port's design was even better than the kingdom's own facilities, which made Kamyu take note of the fact that Heel was from Sanfales. Heel revealed that he was the 17th prince of Sanfales, but was exiled from the country for being a failure. He added that ever since talking with Rihanna about his past, he'd felt more comfortable bringing it up. Kamyu felt sorry for Heel, but Heel just smiled and said that he was now living on this uninhabited island, and he wanted to develop it into a better place. He decided he would discuss the port construction plan with Varys and Mappa. However, Kamyu still seemed not entirely satisfied with his own design. After witnessing Heel's rapid construction method, from building the retaining walls to filling in the land inside, Kamyu was completely astonished. Elvin proudly said that his leader could do just about anything, proving that the power and talent of the Cave Seal King were truly extraordinary. Kamyu realized that with this method, they would be able to build a perfect port. Heel explained that he could only build the foundation and asked Kamyu to supervise the construction process. Varys agreed, saying Kamyu was the most suitable person for the job. Kamyu happily accepted the task and promised to create a magnificent seaport. To help out, Heel provided Kamyu with some golems. Golems number 1 through 7, which had previously been destroyed by Leviathan, were now fully repaired and ready for work. With everything ready, the next step was to mine more stone for the port's construction. Heel returned to the quarry after a long time away and felt incredibly happy to be mining again. Fu congratulated him, but also noticed he wasn't using the mithril ice axe. Heel explained that he still had it, but for now, he wanted to use a smaller, easier-to-handle axe. Suddenly, they heard Ashton and Highness telling Riel to stay back in the safe area, but Riel kept trying to cause trouble because she wanted to move around freely. Heel asked them to look after Riel for a bit. Fu then joked that if Riel couldn't help, perhaps Highness would have to work in her place. Highness immediately agreed and joined in on the mining. Just then, Fu teased him, asking if he was only good at using weapons, which made everyone laugh in a light-hearted and cheerful atmosphere. Heel tried to tell Fu not to tease Highness too much. Ashton reassured them that it was a good thing Fu was keeping such a relaxed attitude, even though they had just joined. Ashton showed Highness how to mine, and Highness quickly got the hang of it, even starting to compete with Fu. Heel was delighted to see their mining team growing and felt a sense of excitement. Ashton decided to get back to work, and just then, Riel used her prophetic ability, pointing to a specific spot. Meanwhile, Highness and Fu were enthusiastically mining various types of ore, but Ashton called out to Heel, announcing that he'd found something strange. Highness and Fu were surprised to see Ashton had gotten ahead of them, thanks to Riel's help. They hurried over to check and discovered a mysterious box, apparently made of Orichalcum. Fu wondered if it was a coffin, but Ashton didn't think that was a very convincing reason. Then Heel found a strange stone and checked it against his ore guide. This stone turned out to be a teleportation stone, allowing instant travel between similar stones. The teleportation distance depended on the size of the stone. Fu pointed out an indentation that looked just like the stone in Heel's hand. When Heel tried placing the stone into the slot, it fit perfectly. The box began to glow, astonishing everyone. It was a teleportation device, activated by the stone as a power source. Fu wondered where they could teleport to from here, while Ashton was worried about the destination. They considered sending a golem through first, but Mappa quickly stepped into the device and vanished instantly. Everyone was in shock when they realized Mappa was gone. Fu decided to go after him and told everyone to wait, but Ashton stopped him and volunteered to go first. Riel used her prophecy to pinpoint Mappa's location, and after seeing the place, the whole group got excited to go immediately. Fu felt relieved that the place seemed safe and asked Shell to call Varys over. Before they could even make a plan, Riel jumped into the teleportation device, followed by Fu, Ashton, and Highness. The device was crammed with all of them, but no one was willing to get out. In an instant, they were all teleported, appearing on the other side of the device. They were stunned to find themselves in a massive library, with hundreds of thousands of books stretching as far as the eye could see. The sight was beyond anything they could have imagined, making them wonder if they were even on Sheol Island anymore. Heel reassured them that they were still on the island, as the place looked similar to other rooms he'd seen that contained transformation stones inside golems. Still, the vast library was both beautiful and eerie, since aside from them, there was no one else there. Highness mentioned that Mappa was up ahead and suggested the group hurry and find him. Heel agreed and asked Highness to lead the way. When they got there, they found Mappa lying on the floor, with blood pooled around him. Heel panicked, thinking he'd been attacked. But he quickly realized the reason was something ridiculous. Mappa had gotten a nosebleed from reading a book full of inappropriate pictures. Mappa got up right after that and found a book about the mark of the Cave King. Heel told Mappa to hurry up. Since he couldn't read, Mappa tossed the book aside and followed the group. When Heel returned to where they started, he saw that Shell had led everyone to safety. Heel asked Varys if he'd found any useful books, but neither Varys nor Heel could understand the language they were written in. Kamyu was incredibly excited, finding everything more interesting than ever. He was convinced that beyond the teleporters and the massive library, this place must hold the treasures of a lost civilization. Kamyu suggested they explore more of the island. Heel agreed, but reminded everyone to be careful in areas that looked like they might collapse and to watch out for golems. With that, they began to explore the library. A little while later, Fu called Heel over, saying she'd found a book with some interesting pictures. When Heel looked at the book Fu had found, he saw a detailed drawing of a massive town. He wondered what town it was, feeling as if he'd seen similar buildings somewhere before. Rihanna pointed out that the mountain in the picture looked just like Sheol, though it was much larger and more beautiful than it is today. Just then, Heel noticed Shell staring at something. Following her gaze, he spotted a large statue of a woman. Rihanna remarked that the statue looked like a beautiful goddess. Heel guessed it might be a deity that the people of Sheol worshipped long, long ago. He was genuinely amazed to see these things, since not even his own kingdom had any records of such ruins. Heel wondered what other ruins might be waiting to be discovered on Sheol Island. After exploring the library further, the group gathered and reported that they'd found some heartstones and magic stones from the remains of the golems. The place was still a mystery, so Varys suggested they study the books and try to decipher them. While they were talking, Fu noticed that the sound echoing off the wall behind them sounded odd. She went over to it and gently knocked on the wall, and discovered it was hollow. Heel went to check it with her, but they couldn't find any way into the space. Fu asked if she should try to break through, and Heel found the right spot to strike. Fu carefully struck the spot with her ice axe, and her hunch was right. As they looked inside, Heel suddenly congratulated Fu, as they had found a hidden compartment holding 3 transformation stones. Fu recalled the days when she would always wake up earlier than everyone else. The first thing she did each morning was head to the cave to mine with golem number 15. Fu had always been more passionate about mining than anyone else, and she was even the last to leave the mines every day. Heel had been a little worried seeing her so dedicated to the work, but he understood she had a clear goal, to find a transformation stone. Back on the surface, the group discussed their discovery. For some of them, it was the first time they'd ever heard of transformation stones. Rihanna confirmed that the stones were real, as she herself had evolved using one. This shocked everyone, who couldn't believe that Rihanna had once been just an ordinary goblin. Kamyu, who hadn't known Rihanna was the princess of the Beldan tribe, was just as surprised. He joked that he used to think Rihanna was an elf princess who'd run away with Heel, because her ears looked so much like an elf's. Hearing this, both Heel and Rihanna were so surprised they did a spit take and shouted, asking Kamyu what he was talking about. Kamyu just laughed teasingly, saying their reaction was strange, as if there was still something they weren't telling him. After that, Heel brought the topic back to the transformation stones, as he hadn't expected them to find 3 at the same time. He declared that one of them would be for Fu, since she was the one who found them and had been searching for one for a very long time. Heel then told Varys that he could use one of the transformation stones. However, Varys was hesitant, suggesting that someone else might be better suited to use it. Heel insisted that he thought it over carefully and believed it would be a waste not to make use of Varys's Mage King sigil. Kamyu was surprised to hear about this sigil, since the Mage King was once one of the most powerful sigils of its kind. Ashton agreed, saying that if Varys could use it, it would be an incredible achievement. Elvin reminded Varys that he was in his final years, and if he got a new body, he would stay healthy for much longer. Fu and Rihanna also didn't want anything bad to happen to Varys. Finally, Varys admitted that he had also thought about activating his sigil, so he agreed and asked Heel to let him use one of the transformation stones. With the decisions made, there was only one transformation stone left, but it seemed no one else wanted to evolve. Ashton and Highness were content with their current state since they could still use their sigils. Then Varys asked Kamyu if he had a sigil. Kamyu revealed that he possessed the Sea Dragon sigil, a powerful mark with the ability to control water. However, only monsters living underwater could use this sigil, which meant Kamyu couldn't activate his. However, Kamyu made it clear that he didn't want to evolve just to be able to use the sigil. Elvin told him that the sigil would make him stronger and would be useful for a sailor. But Kamyu retorted that it was pointless because he disliked the slimy appearance of underwater monsters, and he believed his current body was much more beautiful. He stood firm in his refusal, and the others couldn't force him. In the end, they decided to save the last transformation stone for later. After that, the group decided to use the transformation stones right away. Fu was the first to volunteer. She asked Rihanna what she needed to do, and Rihanna instructed her to simply visualize the form she wanted to become and wish for it with all her might to make it a reality. Fu closed her eyes and began to concentrate on what she wanted to become. She remembered the times she felt weak and was always being protected by others, making her feel like she was always falling behind. But today would be different. She was determined to evolve and become stronger, worthy of the title of the great warrior Elvin's daughter. Everyone around her was amazed as they witnessed their first evolution. Heel even had to cover Mappa's eyes and told Rihanna to keep monitoring the process. Fu successfully evolved and felt that her point of view was now higher than before. She wondered if the process had truly been successful, and Rihanna quickly came over to help cover her up. Rihanna then used a seashell as a mirror to let Fu see her transformation. Fu was overjoyed because she had finally evolved as she had hoped. Rihanna congratulated her, and Elvin also smiled happily, seeing his daughter had grown up. He asked her if she was stronger now. Fu replied that she was magically stronger. She then wondered how to test her new power, and Heel offered to help her test it immediately. Heel reassured Fu that he could see magical energy flowing from her, which meant she could now learn to use magic. Fu wondered why her skin hadn't changed after evolving, while Rihanna looked just like a human. Rihanna, flustered, confessed that her wish had been to become attractive to Heel, and she explained that the evolution might depend on each person's individual desires. Varys thought that when he evolved, his body might also change differently. When it was his turn, Varys used the transformation stone, but everyone was surprised. To see that he had kept his original form, Kamyu wondered why Varys hadn't changed. But Varys quickly realized something was different. As he bent down to pick up his staff, he was surprised to find that the chronic back pain he had suffered from for years was gone. Heel was happy for Varys, but he was also curious about his sigil. Looking closely, Heel noticed an immense source of magical energy radiating from the Mage King's sigil. Varys wanted to test his new abilities and tried to use the sigil by casting a fire spell. The flames engulfed a vast area, far more powerful than anyone had initially predicted. What astonished them even more was that Varys's body appeared younger and stronger. Varys admitted that the Sorcerer King's mark was truly amazing, but he was still having trouble adjusting to the magical energy. Everyone was stunned by this transformation. Elvin asked Varys if it was really him, and an emotional Varys replied that he never thought he'd be able to use magic one day. Heel praised Varys's magical abilities, while also reminding him that his appearance had changed too. Varys didn't understand what Heel meant until he looked at himself in a mirror and was completely shocked. However, just a moment later, his body reverted to its old form, and he fainted right after. When he came to, Heel explained that he had heard the Sorcerer King's mark could transform its owner into the most efficient form for using magical energy. However, his knowledge ended there, as no one in the kingdom had ever shown him the true power of this mark. Varys was delighted to hear that, and felt excited to learn more about his new power. Fu was happy she could help, and believed that with Varys's diligence, he would quickly master the Sorcerer King's mark. Just then, Fu appeared and asked him how her new outfit looked. Heel praised it, saying it looked really cool, and Fu proudly said the princess had worked hard to make it for her. Then she quickly returned to her mining work. Heel reminded her that she could use any magic crystals she found. He thought this was fine, since they were finding fewer crystals now, while Rhianna and he himself had grown stronger, and Varys's magic was also very powerful. Heel suddenly had the idea to teach Fu how to convert magical energy into elements like fire and wind using magic circles, which would require her to learn the mysterious characters to form them. Fu felt a bit overwhelmed but was still excited to learn. She spent a lot of time practicing and quickly got the hang of using magical attacks, although her accuracy was still poor. Even so, she was overjoyed that she could use magic and jumped for joy. Elvin was worried because her stray attacks almost hit Mappa, but Heel reassured him that it was pretty good for a first time. He remarked that Fu was really hardworking and admired her father's strength. Elvin admitted he'd be happy if that were true, but recounted that Fu had always trained non-stop so she wouldn't be left behind by her friends. He mentioned the time she cried after losing a kicking game against the princess, and then became determined to train so she wouldn't lose again. Heel realized that Fu probably pushed herself to evolve just so she wouldn't lose to Rhianna, and that she hated the feeling of being left behind by her friends. He was glad she had a friend to compete with, but also felt a twinge of jealousy because he never had a friend like that. Meanwhile, the construction of the port was underway. They had brought the ship into the dock and begun repairs. Kamyu was eager to return soon, as many families of the Corvus clan were waiting. Heel told Kamyu not to worry about finishing the port and to just set sail as soon as the ship was repaired. Kamyu thanked Heel for his kindness and said he wanted to start trading soon, reminding Heel to think about what goods they would trade. Some of the orcs said they would handle the sea trade and promised to bring back plenty of good merchandise. Heel noticed their excitement and felt happy that they finally had a chance to trade with the outside world. The orcs suggested starting by selling gemstones from Sheol and asked if they could harvest more from Yggdrasil. Heel agreed they would discuss it further later. Just then, the shadow of a monster appeared in the water near the port. Their ship was almost repaired, and they were anxious to get back to their real work, having not sailed for a long time. The monster slowly approached and terrified the orcs as it emerged from the water. It was a serpent-like monster, causing chaos as it destroyed everything at the port. Heel heard the noise, then looked in their direction, wondering what that monster was. Meanwhile, the monster was destroying everything at the dock as the orcs tried to flee from it. The orcs started to flee in terror, and Kamyu arrived just in time, delivering a kick that sent the monster flying backward. Kamyu was tasked with protecting the port and couldn't help but feel disappointed seeing the orcs run away in fear. He ordered them to prepare a counterattack model, but they were too terrified, thinking the monster looked like Leviathan. Kamyu tried to reassure them that this monster was much smaller than Leviathan. However, more sea serpents appeared and attacked the orcs. Just then, Mappa brought Kamyu a new sword to replace the one that had broken in the previous battle. Kamyu took the sword and quickly sliced the monster in half as if it were nothing. He was amazed by the sharpness of the Orichalcum sword and praised Mappa for crafting it. Heel arrived at the docks and asked Kamyu what kind of monster it was. Kamyu stopped him, warning that the monster's severed head was still twitching. He told everyone that the creature was a type of vicious moray. As more of the monster's serpent-like arms began to rise from the water, the group realized that these snake-like creatures were just its arms, and the monster had a single main body. Kamyu stressed that they needed to destroy the main body, or else it would keep regenerating its arms. Just as they were figuring things out, the monster quickly regenerated its arms and continued its attack. At that moment, Fu appeared and launched a fire attack at it. However, upon seeing the serpentine arms recover right before her eyes, she was utterly disgusted and fled in terror. Heel immediately helped her get to a safer distance, and she asked him how to deal with this monster. Kamyu repeated that they needed to destroy the main body, but the arms were in the way. He said he would normally use cannons to handle it, but couldn't do so because he didn't want to damage the port. Meanwhile, Varys approached the monster from behind while everyone else was distracting it. He activated the mark of the Sorcerer King and entered his magic-wielding state. Using water magic, he created water tendrils to bind all of the monster's arms, creating an opening to attack. He signaled to Heel, and Heel told Fu to use lightning magic with him. The two of them combined their powers to unleash a powerful bolt of lightning, causing the monster to explode into pieces. The group rejoiced, having successfully dealt with the monster without causing any damage to the port. Heel was proud to see how much Varys and Fu had improved in such a short time after their evolution. Everyone was also excited about Fu's progress, but Elvin was worried about the orc's mental state. Kamyu realized he had underestimated the fear of Leviathan. Within his crew, he admitted his mistake in not understanding their mindset and realized that in this state, it would be difficult for them to set sail again. Heel tried talking to the orcs, but they revealed their fear that there might be another Leviathan out there somewhere. Varys agreed that this was a possibility, however rare. However, Fu argued that the chances of another Leviathan appearing were extremely low, as it was a legendary beast. Elvin realized that the Corvus tribe still couldn't escape their fear of Leviathan. Varys suggested that if Kamyu wanted to return to his people quickly, he could recruit more members from the Beldon tribe. However, Kamyu refused, saying that the Beldon people would have trouble handling the ship while it was being repaired. And more importantly, the Corvus people were seafarers at heart. If they couldn't go out to sea, their pride would vanish. Heel and the others could sense that Kamyu was feeling truly terrible. Just then, Rhianna proposed to Heel that they should build a stronger ship, one that couldn't be destroyed even by Leviathan, which would help ease the Corvus tribe's anxieties. Heel loved the idea and thought of making the ship's hull out of metal armor. However, Kamyu reminded him that this would be difficult because the metal armor would make the ship heavy, making it hard to move on the sea. Fu suggested using Orichalcum since it was very light. However, Varys pointed out that Orichalcum was a rare material, and they didn't have enough to cover the entire massive hull. Just then, Mappa had an idea and began sketching on the ground. Hyle looked at it and recognized the shape of Leviathan, along with another creature that looked similar to it. Varys understood Mappa's idea, and the group decided to go to the place where the Leviathan's carcass was being kept. Heel was once again struck with awe, recalling how he had defeated such a colossal creature. The Leviathan's scales could withstand cannon barrages and were unaffected by magic. Even ordinary tools couldn't scratch them. So Heel took out his mithril ice axe and used the power of the Cave King to harvest the Leviathan scales. Its scales were much lighter than imagined, which explained why the monster was so agile and fast despite its enormous size. To process these scales, Mappa used the mithril arrows they had once used against the Leviathan, melting them down to create new tools. Kamyu and Mappa discussed which parts needed reinforcement beyond the hull, as well as redesigning the ship's infrastructure. Their plan was to reinforce the scales as much as possible while maintaining the ship's flexibility and durability. They decided to use Orichalcum for the ship's frame, while the internal parts and mast would be made from branches of Yggdrasil. The Leviathan scales would be used to craft the protective armor. With all these efforts, they focused on building a ship exclusively for the Corvus tribe. The group watched intently as the shipbuilding process began. In the evening, Heel reminded Kamyu that it was almost time for dinner, and Kamyu replied that he would be there soon. Earlier, Kamyu had visited the burial site of his fallen comrades, who had been respectfully buried by Heel and his team. Kamyu felt immense gratitude for this kindness. Kamyu began to tell Heel the story from 100 years ago, when a man gathered the displaced orcs after many fierce wars with humans and other races. That man led them to the sea and founded the Corvus tribe. He was a hero named the First Kamyu, who built a great fleet strong enough to challenge the army of an entire nation. Since then, the name Kamyu has been passed down through generations of Corvus leaders. However, when it was his turn, Kamyu felt disappointed that he couldn't lead his tribe to overcome their fear and return to the sea. He shared that he wanted to become stronger, to be worthy of the name Kamyu that he carried, and not to dishonor his ancestors. The next day, the new ship was completed. With the help of the golems, they opened the floodgates and launched the ship into the sea. The ship had a majestic appearance, covered in Leviathan scales, making it look like a sea beast. Fu and Ashton were amazed by the ship, but Heel noticed that Kamyu and his crew still had some lingering anxiety. Kamyu, noticing this, encouraged his crew and announced a trial training session. He noticed the unease still present in them and signaled Heel to execute their pre-arranged plan. Heel ordered Golem number 16 to rise from the water. No one understood what Heel was doing yet, until the giant shadow emerged from the water. The crew sounded the alarm, thinking it was a monster, but they quickly recognized the shape. Golem number 16 looked just like the Leviathan, the monster that had haunted the Corvus tribe. When Golem number 16 attacked with magic, the new ship withstood the blow without any issue. The crew panicked, but Kamyu quickly calmed them down. He reminded them that the ship was unharmed by the attack, and told them to calm down and look closely at their opponent. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was just a golem made of stone. At that moment, those on the shore wondered why the golem was shaped like the Leviathan and why it was attacking. Heel requested that no one interfere, as Kamyu declared the start of a mock battle against the Leviathan. The crew, though fearful, was encouraged by Kamyu. He reminded them of the pride they once had as invincible warriors of the sea. Despite their past defeat to the Leviathan, Kamyu refused to give up. Holding the transformation stone in his hand, he jumped into the sea. Bidding farewell to his old body, Kamyu plunged into the deep waters, with the stone hearing his wish, the desire to become a new leader, strong enough to lead the Corvus tribe back to the sea. The transformation stone began to glow, leaving everyone in awe and curious about the outcome. Then, Kamyu emerged from the sea, having successfully evolved into an Aquaman. He could now use the mark of the sea dragon, a power that was previously beyond his reach. Kamyu prepared to face Golem number 16, swimming towards it at incredible speed. Golem 16 attacked with magic beams, but thanks to his sea creature abilities, Kamyu easily dodged them in the water. He glided across the water's surface as fast as if he were flying, and even Kamyu himself was surprised by the sea dragon's ability to control the water around him. He was determined to confront Golem 16 head-on. But with its tough stone body, Golem 16 had an incredibly strong defense. While dodging the Golem's attacks, Camus tried to find a way to strike back. The orcs on the ship grew anxious seeing their leader fighting alone. Rihanna and Heel were also worried that, despite having evolved, Camus might still struggle against the Golem. However, Camus blocked one of the Golem's strikes with his bare hands, though he was pushed backward through the water. Just as the Golem was about to attack again, Camus' crew steered the ship closer and readied their weapons. They didn't want to let their leader fight alone. So they fired the cannons and shot arrows at the Golem, creating an opening for Camus to counterattack. Camus was happy to see their teamwork had returned. He dove under the water to prepare for the decisive blow. Using the power of the mark of the sea dragon, he created a whirlpool that enveloped Golem 16, swallowing it despite its enormous size. As the Golem was pulled into the vortex, it couldn't move freely, while Camus moved easily around it. He decided to destroy the Golem, hoping Heel could repair it later. Camus drew his sword, transforming it into a powerful water drill. He created a 3-pronged drill from his sword and plunged it straight into Golem 16. The massive impact completely destroyed the Golem. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Camus had defeated the Golem in the mock battle. The orcs were proud of their leader, who had bravely given up his old body to evolve and restore faith in the Corvus tribe. After things settled down, everyone returned to port. Camus and the orcs were warmly welcomed by Heel. Heel praised Camus for his outstanding performance, but Camus humbly said that he could only do it thanks to his crew. He had clearly felt the doubt and lack of trust from both himself and his comrades, but now they had overcome it. Camus apologized to everyone and asked if they wanted to continue conquering the seas with him. The orcs, spirits high, affirmed that they had never stopped seeing him as their leader. Elvin then teased Camus for having to give up the beautiful body he was once so proud of. Camus immediately took off his shirt, showing off his new body, now sleek and powerful. In his eyes, he had not only evolved in strength, but had also awakened a new kind of beauty. With the perfect ship and an amazing crew, Camus was confident that the upcoming journey would be a resounding success, and Heel agreed with him. Camus and his crew spent a week testing and fine-tuning the ship. Meanwhile, Heel and Varys discussed the goods they would trade. The day before Camus set sail, the group held a big farewell party. The Corvus tribe enjoyed the feast to the fullest. As night fell and things grew quiet, Heel, Rihanna, and Shell went to check on the ship. Rihanna expressed a desire to see the ship up close and asked Heel if he liked ships. Heel replied that he didn't exactly like ships, but he was always fascinated by the outside world they could take you to. When Rihanna asked if he wanted to travel by ship one day, Heel admitted he had never thought that far ahead, as it was just a dream to him. He shared that when he was in the kingdom, he couldn't find a place where he belonged, but now Sheol had become his true home. His words made Rihanna smile happily. Suddenly, Riel noticed someone in the ship's crow's nest. Camus came down, knowing he couldn't fool Riel's sharp eyes. Heel apologized for coming aboard without notice, but Camus smiled and said that this ship was also a part of Heel, so he was always welcome here as someone Camus truly respected. Camus then said seriously that he wanted to discuss something important with Heel. Hearing the solemn tone in Camus' voice, Heel wondered what could be troubling him so much. Finally, Camus revealed that the matter concerned Heel's homeland, the Sanfales kingdom, where his father reigned. When Heel asked Camus what he knew about his homeland, Camus made a shocking revelation. Claude's faction, the traitors, were actually hired by the Sanfales royal family to carry out that plot. Heel was stunned by the news and couldn't believe it at first, because the Sanfales kingdom had always despised monsters. Camus apologized for staying silent for so long, but while they were pursuing Claude, they found a survivor in the wreckage left by the Leviathan. The survivor was on the brink of death, but in his final moments, he confessed that their mission was to suppress all the powerful monster tribes near the kingdom. In return, they were promised great rewards, along with protection from the strongest nation on the continent of Berlin. The initial plan was to hire Camus, but Claude rejected it. knowing Kamyu would never accept such a mission. Heal was devastated to learn that his own father had ordered the scheme and desperately wanted to know why. Kamyu went on to explain that the kingdom of Sanfalaise was originally an ancient one. But under the reign of Heal's father, it expanded so dramatically that it became the largest nation on the continent. Hiring the Corvus tribe was likely just another way for them to extend their influence. However, Kamyu voiced a different concern. He asked Heal if he was truly exiled. When Heal confirmed that he was, Kamyu pressed further, because everything that was happening, Heal being sent to Sheol, becoming the Cave King, the vast treasure trove of underground resources, and the seal that grants the power to dig freely, it all seemed too coincidental, fitting together too perfectly. Hearing this, Heil couldn't help but consider the possibility that his father might have already known about the Cave King's power and what lay hidden beneath Sheol. Still, Hale found it strange. If his father had known, he surely would have sent more people to develop the island. Kamyu speculated that the reason might be that whatever lies dormant beneath Sheol, Heal's father didn't want it to become public knowledge. Rihanna quickly realized Kamyu was referring to the underground ruins. Kamyu went on to say that at first, he had been suspicious of Heal too, thinking he was just pretending to be clueless about everything. But after living here for a while, Kamyu realized Heal was genuinely different and decided to put his trust in him. He placed a hand on Heal's shoulder, reminding him that he was still the Prince of Sanfalaise and that Sheol was still its territory. Because of that, a day might come when Heal would have to face his own country to protect it. Heal listened, understanding what Kamyu was saying. Kamyu's words reminded him of something he had long forgotten. He realized he still had ties to Sanfalaise and his father, even though he'd been exiled. The next day, Kamyu and the Corvus tribe departed, filled with warm feelings for everyone in Sheol. They were going to reunite with their families in hiding. Heal also finished repairing Golem number 16 and sent it to escort Kamyu, ensuring their journey would be safe. Later, Heal recounted his conversation with Kamyu and apologized to everyone, revealing that the Sanfalaise royal family was behind the attacks on the Beldan and Tiberis tribes. Elvin told him he had nothing to apologize for, as it wasn't his fault. Everyone began discussing how to respond. Varys was worried that Heal's connection to his homeland could cause trouble. Elvin, on the other hand, was confident they could fight off anyone who dared to mess with the monsters. Varys warned that such an act could lead to war, which made Heal feel guilty for dragging everyone into danger. Elvin reassured him that Sheol was now home to all of them. Hearing this, Heal knew it was no time for hesitation. He resolved to take action and ask for everyone's help. Varys suggested that one of the reasons Heal was sent to Sheol was to exploit its resources, and that sooner or later, they would come seeking to trade. This meant humans and monsters could coexist, not out of understanding, but for mutual benefit, while also bringing wealth to the nation. Ashton asked if they needed to become stronger to negotiate with the kingdom, and Varys agreed that they did. Fu and Rihanna had a simple idea for how to develop the island further. Ashton remarked that any negotiation would depend on Sanfalaise's true intentions. Heal realized that just as Kamyu and Rihanna had pointed out, the key likely lay with the ancient civilization in the ruins beneath Sheol. Varys hoped they could decipher the books in the library to find out more. After careful consideration, Heal proposed a solution: to form the Sheol Ruins excavation team, consisting of himself, Fu, the kobolds, the slimes, and the cave spiders. Fu teased that this was no different than their daily mining crew, but Heal just wanted to give everyone some new motivation. Rihanna prepared dried rations for the team and reminded him to be back before dinner. Heal thanked her for her help. Once everything was ready, they began excavating the new ruins, determined to uncover every secret buried beneath the lands of Sheol. If they followed the flow of the water, Heal knew his reasoning was correct and decided to press on deeper. While making sure not to dig too forcefully and break any of the ruins, they pursued the magical energy they could feel from any artifacts and also monitored any reactions from their surroundings. They continued to dig carefully, pushing further for a week. But strangely, they found nothing new. He couldn't even find any trace of the passages connecting the rooms. Then Ashton mentioned how they had reached the library through a teleportation device. That means it's possible it was also used to travel between the other ruins. Maybe that's why they never found any passages in the rubble, and each of them had their own teleportation device. Heel thought that was plausible and wondered what they should use as a reference point to continue digging. Ashton reminded Heel that it was almost dinner time, so they should head back and take things one step at a time. Otherwise, Rihanna might scold them for being late. Heel agreed and told everyone to call it a day. But then he realized Riel was nowhere to be seen, and everyone started searching for the boy, thinking he might have wandered off on his own again. Then Heel heard a scratching sound, and when he followed it, he found Riel. He grew worried when he noticed that Riel's leg was bleeding. He tried to calm the boy down, but he wouldn't stop. Fu thought the boy looked like he was in pain and asked what was wrong with Riel. Heel told her it looked like the boy wanted to dig at the spot right in front of them. After checking that it was safe, Fu started digging at the spot with her axe. Ashran and Highness, along with Heel, were all surprised to see the remains of a bird's skeleton deep inside the cave. Heel noticed Riel was pointing at an egg, which appeared to belong to the dead bird. However, it had fossilized. Hyle figured the corpse had been underground for so long that its egg had turned to stone. Riel seemed unwilling to leave the egg and wanted to take it with him no matter what. Ashton and Heel were at a loss for what to do. Worried about upsetting Riel, Heel decided to figure out a way for them to carry the egg. She then took the egg and fashioned a sling for Riel's back that could also hold the egg on the boy's back. It looked adorable on Riel's back. Heel asked the boy if it was heavy, but he seemed fine and was incredibly happy. Riel carried the egg everywhere with him, refusing to part with it even when he slept. Heel felt as if it might actually hatch, but at the same time, that seemed impossible. It was almost as if the egg was alive while they slept. The next day, they went digging again, and Highness found something strange. He told Heel that it seemed to be something new, and that he sensed an unnatural sound coming from where he was digging. However, Heel couldn't hear anything from that spot, and neither could Fu. But Highness had exceptional hearing, even for the Tyrus tribe, so he was certain it was something unnatural, but he couldn't quite put it into words. He tried to explain it. There was a current ahead of them, but it had no fluctuations. And Riel was still asleep, so they had no way to confirm it. Heel decided to just dig there, figuring it was the best way to find out what it was. Highness used his hearing to make sure they were digging in the right direction. After a while, Hyle could also hear the sound of running water. He kept digging toward the sound and discovered an open space behind the wall. Just as he was about to step forward, Terran shot out his thread and attached it to Heel. He was startled, but realized Terran had done the right thing, as he was standing on a high precipice. He thanked Terran for the help and discovered a large structure ahead that looked like some kind of tower or pillar, continuously producing water from its peak. Heel realized it was entirely man-made, which explained why Highness had sensed something unnatural. They had successfully found another ruin. Heel asked how tall the pillar was, but not even Highness could see the top. Then Ashton noticed that the water was seemingly gushing right out of the pillar's surface, and there were no pipes or outlets attached to it. Heel noticed a sky blue stone was generating the water and told Terran to figure out a way to get it out of the pillar. Terran used his web to pluck one of the stones from the pillar, and after checking it with the Cave King's insignia, he learned that it was a spring stone that created water using magical energy. Heel was amazed that such a thing could create water, and imagined that as long as they had it, they would have a source of water wherever they went. Ashton was thinking deeply about the water source here in the underworld, so he suggested they might be able to reach other ruins if they followed the water's flow. Hyle understood his point and decided to head down. Suddenly, Highness heard a digging sound nearby. He pointed to the wall where the sound was coming from, and sensed magical energy, alerting the group. As the mysterious digging source got closer, Heel could feel it possessed immense magical power. Finally, a huge creature burst through the wall. Heel suspected it might be a legendary dragon, so Highness remained on high alert. The creature roared, mistaking them for inhabitants of the underground. But suddenly, it lost its balance and fell into a chasm, crying out for help. Heel quickly had Terran shoot a web to catch the creature. Even with the whole group's effort, the creature was too heavy and nearly dragged them down with it. Heel told them to just hold on for one more second. Heel used his power to create stone steps beneath the creature for it to grab onto. Just then, everyone lost their grip on the web, but luckily, it had found a foothold and didn't fall. Thankfully, the dragon was saved without anyone getting hurt. Fu wondered if it was going to eat them, but everyone tensed up as the dragon slowly climbed up. After reaching solid ground, the creature asked if they were the masters of these ruins. They were surprised, as they had the same question for the dragon. Afterward, they brought the dragon up to the surface and let him enjoy the delicious food they had been saving for a long time. The dragon introduced himself as Roiden, an earth dragon. Varys couldn't believe he was seeing a legendary dragon he had heard so much about. Fu seemed to know the legends too, but the real dragon looked a bit different from what she had imagined. Heel asked Roiden if the underground ruins belonged to him, but Roiden denied it, saying he wasn't from these parts. Roiden explained that he came from the continent of Elto, a blazing red land where volcanoes erupted and lava flows were common. There, dragons fought over territory. He had dug through the ocean floor and traveled straight east for a month to get here. Heel was amazed to hear about Roiden's journey. Roiden also admitted he was scared of them at first because he had never seen people like them, and he thanked Heel and the others for saving him. Meanwhile, Heel was a little annoyed that Roiden had lost the digging scale. Roiden explained that he communicated through telepathy, which bypassed any language barriers. Heel wondered if that meant he could also read their hearts. He couldn't read thoughts, but he could sense and understand the intentions of the person he wanted to communicate with. And the words Heel and the others heard from him were Roiden's thoughts being translated into their own thoughts, inside their own heads, which is why they had no language problems talking with each other. Fu excitedly asked if telepathy was some kind of magic. Roiden told her he didn't know about magic or crests. He sent his thoughts through his horn. Varys and Heel examined Roiden's horn and realized that's where his magical energy was concentrated. Roiden asked about the Yggdrasil tree and expressed his awe at seeing it with his own eyes. It looked even more magnificent than what he had heard. He believed that if Yggdrasil was real, then the other legends he'd heard might not be just myths either. Roiden asked if there was a nearby continent called Paradise. Heel wasn't sure, but Roiden insisted he'd heard it was a real continent, a place in the Far East where humans and monsters lived together, with all sorts of races, rich cultures, and lush nature. Roiden noted that this was a small island, but it fit the rumors he'd heard quite well. Heel thought that maybe he was talking about the continent of Berleon. Rhianna wasn't sure about that either. Roiden, however, thought that might not be right. Varys asked if he was looking for a new place to move to. Roiden denied it, saying his goal was different, and that meeting Heel and the others might just be a stroke of luck. He told everyone to gather around for a look. Roiden placed his basket on the ground and unlocked it, claiming he would show them a rare collection from the distant land of Elto. He introduced himself as Roiden, a traveling merchant, and invited them to look at his wonderful wares. Heel hadn't expected Roiden to be a merchant. Roiden explained that his business wasn't doing well in Elto due to the wars, so he was expanding into the new land of Shol. Roiden took out dozens of items they had never seen before. But what surprised Heel even more was that his basket could hold so much. Roiden explained it was a compression basket, made from the stomach of a Yojigan lizard, which could compress anything placed inside, allowing it to hold many items. Everyone admired the items, some of which were very beautiful, as they were all made from dragon materials. He pointed out that the vase was made from processed scales, the knife from claws, and the other items were similarly crafted from high-quality dragon materials. Heel understood why he had never seen these items before, as dragons were extremely rare. Roiden then showed Heel the eggs of a fire dragon and a wyvern, both flying types, but they were covered in ice. Varys asked why, and Royden explained it was to preserve the eggs, so they could be boiled and eaten later. Heel was surprised to learn that from Royden's perspective, they were just food, and that this was considered normal. In fact, among dragons, it was common to treat the bodies of other dragons as resources. They could also warm them up and hatch the eggs if they wanted. Heel asked Royden if the newly hatched dragons would imprint on them. Royden agreed, saying the dragons would see the first person they laid eyes on as their parent. Fu whispered to Heel that they should raise one, as it would allow them to fly. Heel told Royden he would take an egg and asked about the price. Royden pointed to Yggdrasil and asked if he could have a few of its seedlings. Elto had become a wasteland, but Royden thought Yggdrasil could help revive the land, just as many now extinct Yggdrasil trees had done in the past. He planned to plant them once the volcanic activity ceased. Rihanna was delighted, thinking Royden wanted to revive his homeland. But his real reason was to profit from selling the seedlings, just as you'd expect from a merchant. Afterward, Royden received the seedlings, and in exchange, Heel got a dragon egg along with several items for Mappa to study. Royden also gave them an extra gift package to thank them for the earlier meal, which was made from the same material as the compression basket. Inside were rocks and soil he'd found on his travels. Heel was delighted to receive it, as the soil would help them expand their fields. Royden was happy, believing Heel would become a regular customer of his. Afterward, Royden left to rest for the night, promising to visit again. No one had expected that someone other than Camus would become Sheol's first trading partner. Heel realized there was a whole world out there, with continents like Elto and even dragons. He wondered how many other civilizations might exist, just like the one he hoped to discover beneath Sheol. Heel returned to where they had met Royden to continue exploring the ruins. He figured that since water was flowing from the pillar with the spring stones, they should follow its current to learn more about the ruins. He knew he would need Terran's help to get down the slope, while Ashton said he'd have no problem getting down by himself. Soon after, Rihanna eagerly joined the investigation team, thanking Heel for letting her join the expedition into the mysteries of underground Sheol. Ashton announced he would go first and told Heel to follow, then immediately took off. Heel was impressed. Next up was Highness, who took Fu and Riel with him, while Heel and Rihanna decided to descend with Terran. Heel felt a bit nervous having Rena so close, but he couldn't afford to be distracted now. Before coming to survey the area, Heel had thoroughly prepared his equipment. Rihanna noticed and asked about it. He told her he had learned tool maintenance from Mappa, and indeed, his ice axe was gleaming. She asked if he was worried about exploring the new ruins. Heel admitted he was both curious and anxious, wanting to find what his father might have been searching for. Heel couldn't really imagine his father's thoughts, as he'd never tried to understand them. He couldn't recall many conversations with him. Aside from formal exchanges or orders, in the royal court, his father's word was absolute. So Heel figured he would be displeased if he were to unearth what his father had sought for so long. Rihanna comforted him, encouraging him to be resolute in uncovering Sheol's secrets and finding out what his father truly wanted. Heel reaffirmed his own resolve to press forward with the exploration, feeling that even though he had turned his back on his father and the kingdom, he could now finally face them. As he descended the cliff with Terran, it marked the next phase of his exploration of Sheol. During the descent, Terran held a spider thread for safety. After going down a few meters, Heel saw a faint light, and they soon reached the bottom, which was a large, semi-domed space with channels guiding water from above. Rihanna noted that the place had been heavily damaged over time. Heel thought it would have been nice if the path ahead was still intact, but for now, he wondered where the others were. Fu called out to Heel from behind a pillar, announcing they had found a waterway that led deeper. She showed him the way, and he saw Ashton standing there while Highness was in the channel, trying to listen for sounds ahead by lightly tapping the wall with the back of his sword. Afterward, Heel wondered what Highness was doing. When Highness returned, he assured everyone that there was no need to worry about the channel collapsing. It would get more complicated the deeper they went, so it was possible they could get lost. Heel was surprised that Highness could tell that just by listening. Rihanna said they could mark their path so they wouldn't get lost, and Fu was excited about the exploration ahead. They advanced into the water channel, and Heel was amazed that such a thing even existed here. He wondered who created it and why. Rihanna said it was likely humans, as they had seen signs of a previous creature next to the statue of a woman in the library. Ashton said that they might be creatures unknown in Berleon, but perhaps their descendants were living somewhere else. Fu added that they might also be building and living underground, which could make them the subterranean dwellers that Royden had mentioned. Fu then noticed something on the path, and when they checked, it turned out to be just some slimes. Heel said they should leave the slimes alone since they were harmless. They realized that slimes lived underground. Heel also remembered that he had encountered creatures like Shell in caves. Another figure that came to mind was Mappa, and he wondered what era Mappa came from, or if he knew anything about these ruins. The channel ahead led to another one, and they tried to follow the sound of flowing water. Then, they arrived at a vast corridor that seemed to lead to a large, open space. Highness said he had managed to follow the sound of water flowing beneath it and that it led to a gate. Heel decided to press forward, when Shell suddenly noticed something and started dancing around. Right after that, the gate suddenly slammed shut along with the entrance they had come through, trapping them inside. Rihanna began to sense magical energy emanating from the walls, and mysterious blocks began to emerge from the walls, transforming into troublesome-looking security drones. As they began to glow, the drones fired energy beams toward them. Heel immediately created a shield to protect everyone just in time and told them to be careful. He realized that these drones were a form of security. Heel used lightning magic to destroy them. But to his surprise, the drone absorbed his magical attack and fired it back. He was knocked back by the explosion, realizing the capabilities of these drones. Fu said that they couldn't attack them this way. Suddenly, one of the drones approached Fu and absorbed the shield she was using, making the situation dire for them. Ashton immediately rushed forward to draw the drone's attention. He asserted that if they couldn't use magic against these drones, then they should attack them directly. Ashton began to slice through a few nearby drones. Heel could feel the power of the captain of the Imperial Guard from the Tiberius tribe, Gale Ashton. He quickly dashed forward, starting to take out the drones from a distance. The drones tried to target him, but Ashton was so fast they couldn't keep up. Ashton instantly cut them down, leaving Heel and Rihanna astonished by such high speed, while Fu cheered him on. As Ashton took down some of the drones, the ones around Heil also turned and headed toward Ashton. Heel told Highness he should go help Ashton, but Highness told him not to worry, as his brother Ashton could handle it himself. Ashton was truly skilled in battle. Then the drones attacked him in a coordinated formation, firing heat rays back and forth, and managed to knock Ashton down once. But Ashton wasn't greatly affected by that attack. Even while surrounded by dozens of other drones, Highness quickly backed Ashton up, showing that their coordination was far superior to the drones. With their coordinated attacks, Ashton and Highness destroyed all the drones. Ashton ended the fight with his darkness move, so fast that it made everyone believe he was everywhere at once. All the drones had been taken down before Heel and the others even realized it. When Ashton announced that they could advance, everyone was safe thanks to him and Highness. Heel went to check what these drones were made of. He discovered a few heart stones in the pile of drone wreckage and thought he could collect them to craft something new. Heel found the materials used to create them, including magic-absorbing crystals, floating stones that helped them fly, and black iron which made them resistant to heat. Fu tried using a floating stone and succeeded. Heel then understood how these drones operated and learned something new. Afterward, Ashton noted that the drones seemed to be protecting something, so they should go check it out. Heel agreed, and the door in front of them began to open without needing to be destroyed. Ashton sensed something inside the door, and after a closer look, a golem appeared, which didn't make the situation any easier for them. The appearance of a new enemy took everyone by surprise. Heel saw the heartstone inside the golem, so he figured it was just another puppet. This time, the golem looked incredibly powerful, with a form like a combination of a knight and a horse. Ashton warned everyone not to take their eyes off it. And suddenly, the golem began to speak in a strange language. Heel was surprised to hear it speak, but he couldn't understand what it was saying. He wondered if talking golems really existed. But according to Fu, it was just spouting nonsense. Rihanna figured that the golem's language might be like the one in the books they had found in the library earlier. However, Huel decided to test if the golem could understand him by approaching it and saying he came from the world above. The golem couldn't understand a single thing he said. It then drew a magically imbued sword from its arm. Rihanna and Fu were stunned, and Highness warned them to back away. Highness managed to block the golem's attack, while Heel tried to explain that they were not its enemy. The golem only increased the power of its attack, and Highness realized that a fight was inevitable. Ashton joined the battle and instructed Highness to try and capture the golem without destroying it, if possible. The two of them fought the golem together, but it proved to be highly skilled, able to keep up with both of them at once. The clash of swords echoed around them, but it held its ground against them. Ashton and Highness were even pushed back by its attacks. They knew this opponent was strong. Fu thought about helping and attacked it with magic, but even though Ashton tried to stop her, she attacked anyway. The golem raised its left arm, the one with the absorbing crystal, absorbed her attack, and she apologized for making the situation more difficult. Ashton figured it out. The golem had transformed its arm into a bow and was firing an arrow imbued with fire magic. Everyone was on guard against the shot. Heel immediately created a rock shield in front of them to protect everyone. He told everyone to hide behind it as the golem continued its assault. The golem then charged at them with a spear in hand, powerful enough to shatter the rock they were hiding behind. Fortunately, everyone managed to dodge the impact just in time, and Heel realized that this monster was on a completely different level than the golems and puppets they had faced before. Ashton realized they had been too naive to think they could capture it, so he sped up the fight, using his shadow slash skill with wind-like speed. Surprisingly, the golem was still able to see through Ashton's attack despite his speed. It overpowered Ashton with a single blow, but he managed to block the attack with his sword. He was shocked that the golem could keep up with his speed. The golem then charged in to attack both of them, and they could feel the pressure of its next assault. It attacked them with unpredictable speed. Hyle, Rihanna, and Fu watched as Ashton and Highness were being pushed back, and they could do nothing to help. Heel got an idea. While Highness and Ashton were holding the golem off, he laid out a plan with Rihanna and Fu. They began to execute the plan immediately. Seeing how urgent the situation was, Heel asked Riel, who was still asleep in his bag, to use her clairvoyance ability to locate a water source. When he saw it, he destroyed it with his ice axe. When the waterway was destroyed, Ashton and Highness felt the impact from behind. Immediately, the entire area flooded, the water rising above their ankles. Heel then told Highness and Ashton to back up against the wall. Then, Hyle, along with Rihanna and Fu, cast a freezing spell over the entire water's surface, while they stood above it, supported by Terran's silk. The golem also leaped out of the water to avoid the freezing attack. A moment later, the entire area was covered in ice. Heel targeted the golem's claws, which were ill-suited for moving on ice. Next, Terran used his silk to pull the golem's legs down. Ashton and Highness saw this as their chance to act, and they began attacking the golem from both sides, leaping from wall to wall. They thought they had finally trapped the golem. But its next move took them by surprise. It slammed the ground to launch itself upward, displaying speed just like Ashton and Highness. Everyone was astonished. No one expected the golem could move like that. Just as Ashton and Highness were still stunned, the golem charged between them and attacked with a spinning arm strike, sending them flying into the walls. Heel and Highness were both stunned by the golem's mobility. They noticed its feet had transformed into sharp points, and it was preparing to attack Heel. Highness and Rihanna couldn't reach Heel in time, and Heel knew he couldn't escape, so he braced himself to face it. Just then, Shell appeared and stood in front of Heel. Heel told Shell to be careful, but Shell remained there to protect him. Suddenly, The golem stopped its attack upon seeing Shell, something no one expected. The golem backed away from Heil. The others quickly rushed to Heel's side and asked if he was all right. Ashton wondered why the golems had stopped attacking them. The golem stood there, watching Shell beside Heel in a friendly manner. Then, the golems began to speak, and this time, the voice was different than before. Heel wondered where that sound was coming from. Highness said the sound was coming from inside the golem, and a mechanism on its abdomen began to open. But everyone was shocked when a little girl emerged from inside the golem, rubbing her eyes. They thought they had been fighting a child who was controlling the golem, but that turned out not to be the case, as they saw the golem speaking to the little girl, and she replied in their language. The little girl looked at Heel and, though imperfectly, spoke in his language. Heel asked if she could understand them, and the girl replied that she was learning their language by listening to them speak. They couldn't help but be amazed by the little girl's intelligence. Witnessing a child emerge from a golem in these underground ruins and quickly learn to speak with them. The little girl tried to walk towards Heel but slipped on the ice. Heel asked if she was okay, and the girl said something to the golem, which came over to carry her on its back. Then, the girl noticed the hole in the channel and gave a command, causing the flow of water to temporarily stop. When she gave another command, many flying drones appeared from the door ahead. Fu thought they were reinforcements, but the little girl called them Argo and told them not to attack anyone. Heel realized that was their name, and the drones began to use their internal magic to repair the broken channel. They understood that the little girl was commanding these puppets. She asked them what had happened to the Argos in this passage, seeing that they had been destroyed. Heel tried to explain that he had no other choice, apologizing to her for it. The little girl listened to them, understanding that they came from the surface. Heel also apologized to her for damaging the ruins, but explained that he wanted to find out why his father had sent him to this place, which might be down here. He asked the girl more about these ruins. The little girl seemed to realize for the first time that she'd been underground until now, which surprised Heel a little. She had also just confirmed that she was in ruins. It seemed she had been asleep for a very long time and now had no information about this place. Heel understood that her memory might have been affected, so he asked her why she was protecting the ruins and who she was. The little girl replied that it was her mission to protect this land, and she remembered nothing else beyond that. Meanwhile, Fu was shivering and sneezing from the cold, then apologized because the place was truly cold. Noticing a strange feature, she was actually talking about his cave king's crest. Heel asked if there was anywhere else she could go, and she agreed that it was their fault. Then she asked why the Kavo, referring to the slime shell, had protected him from the attack by Bolshin, the golem that had cornered Ashton and Highness earlier. Heel told her that its name was Shell, that it was his friend, and that Shell had saved him many times. The little girl listened and told them to follow her. Heel asked what he should call her, but she didn't seem to fully understand the question. He went on to ask what Bolshin had called her when they talked, just as his name was Heil, and then he introduced the others. She understood that a name was something personal to them, and said that they could call her Nona. Rihanna and Heel both said cheerfully that it was nice to meet her. It seemed she had a strange quirk. She was actually talking about his cave king's mark. They then proceeded to the door ahead, and upon going inside, numerous Argos were activated, but Nona ordered them not to attack. She assured them that the Argos wouldn't attack as long as they were with her. Fu then asked Nona what language she spoke, but she didn't have a name for her language, and it seemed she had never spoken to anyone other than Bolshin. When Fu asked if she felt lonely, she replied that there was no shortage of people, alluding to her systematic way of seeing things. Meanwhile, Rihanna and Heel were amazed to see Nona learning the Balon language so quickly. It was incredible. Fu suggested that they should take Nona to the library, since she might be able to read for them. But Nona said that she could not leave this place. Fu said she would be welcome, and that if they uncovered the secrets of Shol, her memories might return as well. But Nona said that even though she had no memories, she still had to carry out her mission to protect this place. If she left, all the golem guardians would go out of control, creating a problem of its own. Rihanna suggested she would bring some books next time, and they arrived at a large, mysterious door. Nona told them that the main area lay behind it. Highness, however, smelled something up ahead that he couldn't believe was coming from underground. Heel felt confused, and then Nona commanded the door to open. As the door opened, a brilliant light shone out from within. No one could believe their eyes, as the scene before them looked completely different. They wondered if they were now outside, because the place was full of greenery and there were even fish in the river flowing through its center. Heel looked up at the ceiling to check if they were really still inside the ruins and realized there was a massive sunstone. He heard Riel barking happily when she saw the many slimes in the area. Surprisingly, there were golems there too, but they seemed to only be taking care of the place, carefully trimming leaves to keep everything looking beautiful. Nona reminded everyone not to startle the Kavo, and Hael asked if she took care of the slimes as well. She said that protecting the Kavo was part of her mission. Then Heel remembered something and asked Nona who had given her this mission. She replied that she didn't even know herself. It was hard to explain. She thought for a moment, then said it would be better to show him. She led them on as they enjoyed the beautiful path, which was like a tunnel of trees. She took them to the place where she had woken up and received her mission. She began to tell her story from the beginning, explaining that she had woken up in the dark, unable to see anything and feeling cramped. When she stepped into a brighter world, the first thing she saw was Bolshin kneeling beside her, and the second was a statue of a woman. She led them to the statue, and they were surprised to realize it was the same woman from the library. Heel asked Nona who the woman was, but she didn't remember anything about her. However, when she saw her for the first time, she heard her mission: to protect. It was only a single word, but she could feel what it was she was supposed to protect. Though the stone statue was silent, it remained a fragment of memory in her mind. Heel felt that she was important and sympathized with her. He told her that she could still fulfill her duty of protection without her memories, but he advised her to try and recover them, at least the ones concerning the woman in the statue, since she seemed so important to her. The others were pleased to hear Heel's words to Nona, but she refused, not understanding what he was asking of her. To her systematic way of thinking, his argument lacked any solid foundation. Heel was taken aback by this and tried to explain the importance of emotions, but he didn't know how to get the point across. Just then, Nona realized something and turned back to look at the statue. She moved closer, and Heel followed, asking what was wrong. Nona explained that she hadn't paid attention to something on the statue before because she didn't know what it meant. When Heel looked at what she was pointing to, he was stunned as well. Nona asked him about this incredible coincidence, how the mark on his own signet, the mark of the Cave King, was also on the statue, and just who he really was.